See, you know, that it says Loveland, but it could be Tommy Waddle, or it could say Chris Solfa, because that was my number. Batavia.
That's what he was going for.
Yeah.
Can I get a Chris Solfa in Bears colors?
Well, yeah.
Oh, you can.
You could, but
I have BB Wolf in the back.
you need to get like the.
With one of my numbers.
Yeah.
You can go for. Well, I was 7 until junior year, then I was 84.
Why not?
I didn't hear anything from Tony, so I'm not sure. Call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for January 27th, 2026. First item on our agenda this evening is roll call.
Raza. Here. Lancey.
Here.
Beck. Here. Malay. Malone. Here. Solfa.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Barron. Here. Lehman. Here. Lohman. Here. Pieper.
Here.
Fahrenbach.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
White. That's 12.
Just a reminder to speak directly into the microphone. If you come up to use the one at the podium, adjust it so you can see it, see the little green light on when you're talking. And if you're online tonight, make sure that you're muted unless you are trying to speak. And we'll try to make sure we get an eye on you to make sure that we see your hand up when you want to speak. Thank you. We don't have any minutes for this evening. Do we have any items to be removed, added, or changed? I only know of one. We're going to swap places on the regular agenda with 7.1 and 7.4. So the public hearing, that will move up to the first thing on the regular agenda, and then 7.1, preliminary engineering will move down to 7.4. Okay, I get a motion to change the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next would be item number 5, which is matters from the public. Is there anybody here for anything not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Barron?
Your Honor, the consent agenda reads as follows. Approvals. Resolution 2026-13-R, authorizing the purchase of 3 police vehicles. Resolution 2026-17-R, establishing public hearing and joint review board for proposed TIF number 7. Resolution 2026-20-R, confirming appointment of director and alternate to NIMPA board. Resolution 2026-19-R, authorizing the execution of a contract with ILM Environments of Waukegan, Illinois, for the construction of Mahoney Creek Tributary H. Michael Wild Park drainage improvements, GIGO grant-funded project in the amount of $557,324. I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion by Barron, second by Solfa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And then we'll move on to the regular agenda, and for our change to it, we'll start out with the public hearing for the Thompson Farm annexation and zoning. I'll open that public hearing, and I believe who's going to start us off tonight?
Evening. Good evening, everybody. Yes, so tonight we do have a public hearing for the Thompson Farm annexation agreement. This was reviewed at a public hearing for the Plan Commission for the proposed zoning, land use amendment, and the proposed plan development for the property. The The addition item here tonight would be the annexation, which is in draft form with you tonight. The Plan Commission did conduct a hearing on the 17th. There were about, I believe, 7 speakers from the public that addressed the commission about the project. The project is, through the annexation agreement, limited to a maximum of 160 residential units. There is also a specification or limitation, both within the plan development and the annexation agreement, that the equivalent, or the 220 population equivalent, which is a measure of sanitary sewer capacity, would be provided based on the agreement for the proposed multifamily component of this project. Essentially the site plan and everything that, or the concept plan that was reviewed by the Plan Commission and is before you within this ordinance is essentially a conceptual plan. It does provide an opportunity for using that PE in whichever amount or within the 220 PE, ultimately for some level of multifamily within the module along the northeast portion of the site. That particular area would be on all city utilities. The remainder of the site would be designed for more or for a less dense, more rural style development or large lot development style that would be on city electric and water, but it would be on private septic systems. With the concept plan review process outlined within the annexation agreement, it does provide the ability to provide subsequent speedier reviews of the later actions that would be necessary for approval of the site. But then it also does specify if there's deviations from what is currently in the plans that the normal development processes would go through. That's essentially the main points. The agreement does have the opportunity for the applicant to work with the respective school districts on setting the ultimate boundaries as actually both district lines go through these properties. So it gives an opportunity to negotiate, basically do a little bit of horse trading to make sure that the ultimate boundaries do make sense for the eventual configuration of the property. The other item I should remark on is that did come up through the Plan Commission review is that there is the requirement for a tree preservation plan to be developed with development of the full site. But overall, the Plan Commission was supportive of it and did recommend approval. And staff does recommend approval of all the items before you tonight. The applicant does have their attorney, Kate McCracken, here, as well as Chris Lannert, who's the land planner for the project, as well as I believe there's members of the Thompson family on the Zoom if there's any questions for them as well.
City Council have questions, comments? Start there. Peter?
I had one quick question I was a bit uncertain about. The portion of Winmouth Road there, are we also going to be having responsibility for maintenance and development of that?
Yes, so under Illinois annexation law, we do annex to the far side of the right-of-way. So Winmouth Road would become part of the city's police jurisdiction. The full site would be under our zoning jurisdiction, obviously with an annexation. The property is presently in the fire district, so we already would provide fire service to this property. But yeah, Fabian Parkway in this portion would not be under our jurisdiction because it's already been annexed by Geneva to the north.
Do we know when Winmouth Road was originally installed and when that might be up for significant refurbishment or replacement?
Offhand, I don't know that. I don't know if Public Works might have a better answer, but because it was all developed in the county, I don't know that we would know officially.
Right.
The county is proposing, I believe, to do improvements to the Fabian Parkway and Winmouth Road intersection. They already put up the temporary light. But yeah, in terms of the lifespan of Winmouth, I'm not sure where it's at. At that point.
I don't know that we know exactly when it was paved last. I want to say maybe 15 years ago at this point. But yes, the county is doing on their own the intersection improvements for probably that first 400 feet. of the roadway as part of the intersection improvements to add a turn lane and everything else. So that section will be redone by the county.
It's in Geneva Township. I know Geneva Township
Correct.
takes care of that road, that section of it.
Yes, right.
I think the whole thing, just the,
Just the section that's adjacent to the property, correct?
okay.
Just as a kind of a quick question, when I'm looking at page 43, it shows where the line is for Geneva School District and Batavia School District. And it's kind of splits it into 2/3 Geneva, 1/3 Batavia, but just, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this. What would be, you would think you'd want the whole subdivision to be one school district or the other, so that the kid across the street from the other kid isn't going to a different school. How's that going to work?
So
Yeah,
I don't,
no.
yeah. The applicant's representatives have talked to both Batavia School District and Geneva School District. The redistricting or reboundary would not be for the whole property to go one way or the other. Ultimately, what they would be looking to do, and they might be able to speak more directly on this, but would be to try and just make sure that the houses that are, or the lots that are kind of being bisected by that line would have a rational, like it would basically maybe either follow that line, but essentially they were, I believe the consensus of what the applicant's representative said at the Plan Commission was that so long as they both kind of ended up with the same number of lots as what they would have with the line where it is, they're okay with that, but I don't believe they're looking to trade beyond that.
We'll address that.
Also, the Cambridge subdivision to the east is divided by the school district line, so half of Cambridge goes to Geneva School District and half actually goes to Batavia District. So we already do have this kind of a split. The idea behind this was to prevent split lots where the tax line goes through somebody's property and they're getting actually two tax bills, paying for one school district or another, and maybe their kids don't go to the other school district. I actually had a situation where I lived in one of those situations, and they actually decide where it is based on your master bedroom. So that's kind of how it works.
I think the street would make a nice dividing line right there. You know, it's similar to what's out in, I think it's the southern end of Mill Creek. Subdivision out there between Maine and Fabian is split.
And the street's right above that little
Right,
line.
and that's, to me, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of things don't make sense in that area with streets.
I understand, but that would make a lot of sense right there.
With them both being their own governmental bodies, they, obviously they're elected officials and will have to agree to whatever on both sides of the line is agreed to.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and so looking at the map again, my first question here is I'm seeing sort of some bike path things here. I didn't see that in the memo. I apologize. It was further in the packet. What is the plan for sort of east-west and north-south connectivity along Fabian and then Wenmouth, either getting, for bike ped developments?
Sure. So the green line on, I don't have the exact page number of the packet in front of me, but the overall site plan.
43.
43. So the green line on that particular page is representative of a bike path. It would run the full length of the site from the south end of Wenmouth Road to Fabian Parkway. And then along Fabian Parkway, it would go along the full frontage of the property ownership from the applicant. The original farmstead site was split off and it is labeled as an outlot. And so that was sold to another individual. So it's not part of the annexation and it's not part of the development program. Essentially, the lotting does allow, if they ever wanted to subdivide that the road could connect into some of that and allow for some development potential. But to get back to your question of the bike path, so it would be broken up along that particular lot because that would be an off-site and outside the city jurisdiction item. But it would be similar to the kind of the current conditions to the east where as development has happened, we've been picking up the remaining pieces. So right now from Walmart west, there's a sidewalk that then turns into a 10-foot bike path going along the landings and the Northwest Medicine site. It is currently undeveloped along the vacant parcels along Branson, or the one farm parcel. And then it's currently undeveloped on the Windermere Cambridge site to the west. So those are the incomplete legs. But essentially, if there's development in the future in Branson, there would basically be a continuous run up until the Windermere site, and then it would pick up again with the gap. So it is something that I think is on our radar through the bike plan and the pedestrian plan to fill in those gaps, but we're only able to get them as we're able to with development. And then when the Windermere site, the city will have to add that at some point, probably to provide that last connection, because it was not asked for back in the early 2000s when that property was developed.
Yeah, the bike path there is kind of hodgepodgey, as you say, as well. Also, we have that it might be a couple years old now, at Wenmouth and Fabian. In the morning, that gets quite backed up, especially heading from west to east. It gets pretty significantly backed up. Also heading north on Wenmouth, if you want to turn right, it can be a tough intersection. Do we have any sort of sense or any ideas? First off, that would be a county stoplight.
Yes.
And do we have any sort of sense of the traffic impacts that this might have, since it seems like traffic is primarily going to be heading west out onto Wenmouth to then either go north or south?
One of the discussion points during the Plan Commission hearing was that probably there would ultimately be need for a traffic study when development actually comes, mostly in order to determine whether what type of improvements would be necessary on Wenmouth. Most likely there would be a need for like turn lanes to be added going into what essentially would be Coth Road extended or Coth Lane extended. So there would most likely at that time be a need to do a traffic study at that point. I'm just talking about the main east-west spine road. So with that, we would likely have a traffic study done with development. At this point, it's a little early to say, but with the county intersection, they're probably likely the county or the applicant is showing future dedications based on what the county would likely need for that intersection. So that does help facilitate future improvements, potentially, if the county does get to a point where they're looking to either add turn lanes or other enhancements to that particular intersection.
And just help me understand, and I apologize, if the turn lanes need to be put onto Wenmouth, that would still be county funded, or would that then be city funded?
With development, it would be the responsibility of the developer, or that would be ultimately, because their improvement is generate the need. Anything on Fabian Parkway, ultimately that falls to the county's responsibilities.
Yeah, last comment, I swear at this time. I would just also like to see some planned bike ped access just heading north over Fabian, make that sort of part of this, that we get folks traveling either from this neighborhood or hopefully from the connectivity that we get from the bike paths into the Fabian or the Peck Lake, kind of Peck Farm area. That can be kind of a tough crossing sometimes. I know a little farther up, folks have trouble crossing right there, but if we could get some sort of commitment to make that crossing safe and accessible to bike ped folks would be great. Thank you.
Drew, I believe that this, you can connect through the Cambridge subdivision and then meander your way over to the Branson.
Yes.
signal.
So, yeah, with that's an excellent point, Andrea. The project would be required to have obviously sidewalks throughout the whole development as well. With the at the basically center portion of the site on the map that's on the screen, it tees into the Windermere development to the east. That would be connected to our full sidewalk network as well, in terms of, until those connections are in, there would be a way to, start within the subdivision or from a western point and get to the rest of the trail. The Nightcore right-of-way trail is right there. So that is an important connection or would be a beneficial connection for bicyclists.
Yeah, that crossing for across Fabian right near Cambridge, kind of between Cambridge and Branson there is a tricky crossing for pedestrians. It doesn't quite link up perfectly. You kind of got to do a little jog, then get over a little single link fence thing. I'd just like to see us sort of be intentional about getting us connected to Peck Farm, which is a great amenity, and I'm sure a big reason people would choose to live in this new development.
As part of the Fabian and Wenmouth ultimate improvements, that's something that probably could be talked about with the county since that's their improvement, and talk about if they can put it across, because the Peck Farm path parallels Fabian there, so that might be something they could include as part of their intersection improvements.
Anybody else? Yeah, that would be one of the things I'd like to see is how does this tie into the other path on the other side of Fabian? And then also that little dead zone that's across the outlot that got sold. I think that really needs to be part of this development to get that done, to make that continuous from east to west across there. Lehman?
Can you just clarify again? So right now, Wenmouth Road, is that county sheriff response on Wenmouth, or does our
Currently, if there was an incident or a response necessary along Wenmouth Road, county police would be the responsive entity.
between Fabian and Main Street, that whole area?
Correct, because right now there's not any incorporated areas on either side through the length of Wenmouth on that area.
So I was trying to understand from the memo, if we annex this north section of Wenmouth, then is our police responding on the whole of Wenmouth between Fabian and Main Street?
It would only be along the site limits. So if on the screen, it would be a little further down. It's off screen currently. But basically at the southern boundary line of this property, that would be the extent that Batavia Police would be responsible for. Anywhere south of that boundary line to Main Street would still be county police jurisdiction.
Batavia Fire Department would respond there with ambulance service.
Yes. So both the subject property and Wenmouth Road along this whole area is within the Batavia Fire District, or the Township Fire District, so who contracts with the city of Batavia. So our fire department already responds to any incidents along this area.
This feels like a pretty significant investment on the city's part for this annexation. And I know there's been some numbers crunched and some, Alderperson Pieper has crunched some numbers. And I guess I'd like to hear more, because I haven't been able to dig into what you've done with this. So I'm just curious what some of your thoughts.
I do have a brief presentation to give outlining a very sort of top level sort of financial analysis of this property, not in depth at all, but just to kind of give an example of some of the costs we might be bearing as a part of this development. I would like to give if we're ready for that time now. We good? So, get up. For everyone here.
Anybody on the council hasn't looked, it's already in your email if you wanted to see.
Through Zoom, yes. All right. So like I said, this was a sort of like very top level analysis I did over Christmas break. Fun way to spend the vacation on this property based on some numbers I was able to get from the city and looking through the development as given in the memos that have been sent out. So a quick overview of the suggested development. It's about 75 single-family homes over a 39-acre area and 50 multifamily homes over 13 acres. The 50 in this case comes from a clarification that we got from the developer through Abby, kind of giving a bit more of their own analysis, the development agency's analysis on this property and what they're anticipating. So that's a slight adjustment, I think, from the memo, if I recall. And that's going to be over 13 acres, and then there's going to be 38 acres of open space on the south end for water retention and other, natural area things. These aren't the final plans, of course, as has been stated, but it is intended to follow a rough outline like this. So usually the thing I like to harp on that I tend to focus on is what new infrastructure are we putting in for the amount of development we're getting. This will have about 8,000 feet of new roadway, 6,000 for the single family home section, about 2,000 for multifamily home, give or take a little bit. I had to, just use Google Maps to sketch a rough outline. So there is a bit of wiggle room here. There will be 8,000 feet of new water pipes, about 2,000 feet roughly of new sewer pipes for the multifamily home section. There'll also be electric infrastructure, and I forget, will there have to be stormwater conveyance down to the detention areas on the south end of the lot? There will be? Very good. Okay. The developer, as is the case in most of these developments, handles the initial build out of all of that. The price of the infrastructure is usually added to the cost of the homes as a part of the financing for that scheme. But we are ultimately responsible for the long term, including maintenance and eventual reconstruction as the infrastructure, eventually reaches end of life. So where are those costs? This is a kind of a rough breakdown working with city staff. For the road, and that includes the asphalt, curb and gutter, sidewalks. Am I missing anything there? Is that most of it? That's about $75 million per mile. That lasts about 75 years. Thankfully, we have a very excellent maintenance regime in town compared to a lot of towns especially. So we can generally keep up this infrastructure for a long period of time, which pays dividends in the long term. But yeah, 75 years is pretty good. And that includes resurfacing every 25 years, and that's only about 500K per mile. That's not so bad. The water lines, that's about $2,376,000 per mile. Doesn't have to be that exact, obviously. It's going to be a bit adjusted there. And that lasts about 75 to 100 years. I have a number for sewer, but I don't have it in this presentation. That's like 450 per linear foot. Multiply that by 5,280. And you can get an idea for that. But in the electric, I'm sure we have a number for that. I just didn't include it in this presentation. I didn't want to get too far in the weeds on this. I think the surface, again, this very surface level analysis will kind of tell a lot of the story already. I also want to say I'm mostly focused on the roadway because that comes more out of our general fund and public works budget. The utilities I kind of left on their own devices. Part of that is because I didn't have as firm a number for the utility infrastructure, and part of that is because I didn't have a good idea of what to anticipate a typical house contributes to the infrastructure budget. Staff could probably do a fairly good analysis of that if need be, but I wanted to keep it somewhat simple. I think Jim has his hand up right now. Alderman Fehrenbach.
Go ahead, Jim. You have a question?
So with analysis like this, the only question is, we're talking about bringing in hundreds of high-income households, right? Mm-hmm. We've already mentioned this is going to be shared with Geneva, right? So if our vote goes through and we say no, is the bill just going to turn around and just go next by Geneva and all that potential income to Batavia, we just gave it to our neighbor? Is that a possibility here?
It very much is. It's a matter of whether the...
Let me chime in on that. Right now we have a boundary agreement with Geneva, and Fabian is the boundary line with them. So they could not annex that right now. However, they could go to the county. They could propose a development that would be, county development, and then we would have no control over the land use or the zoning, what's there.
Yeah. That's the trade-off. And that is very true. Kind of the purpose of this analysis is to look at whether we come out ahead or not, even with that new tax money in. And I'll get to that in a moment. I tried to keep this analysis more agnostic, if you will. I'm not going to give, I originally had recommendations. I've removed them since then to give folks the ability to make their own decisions, but you can make some determinations based on that. And I include those in here. So you'll see that in just a moment.
Real quick, Dustin, before you change the screen.
Yep.
You have the total life cycle cost in there at $9.6 million.
Yep. That's
not our cost. Our cost is only the 3 times of rebuilding the road at $500,000, correct?
That's the 2 times we rebuild the road at 25 years and 50 years, and then the reconstruction at 75 years. And that's the cost I gave in the previous slide. The, $7.5 million per mile.
Okay, I thought you were including the original installation of it.
I'm not including that.
Yeah. And then just to follow that up, what Other than the reconstruction costs, what else is going into that figure that you're sharing?
That figure is those reconstruction costs, so the end of life and also the 2 resurfacings. So that's all that's included on this slide right now. Yep.
Dustin, is there any adjustment for the increased cost of construction in the future? So is there like 6% cost increases added each year as well?
This is using this year's data because I can't adequately determine what construction costs will be 75 years from now. I actually don't intend to be alive at that point, so I really couldn't tell you. That'll be future people's problems. Basically, I'm keeping everything with today's numbers because that's what we know right now. We can presume that other aspects of inflation may or may not meet with construction over time. I can't, that's getting very much in the weeds, I think, and thus it's hard to make very useful judgments, especially again 75 years out like that. Any other questions? This is kind of the meat of the discussion here. Got a nice chart to explain it, not a chart, a table. So we are getting 75 units of single family home, 50 multifamily home. We have the total life cycle cost of the infrastructure. So that's knowing how many miles of road we're adding in. And we break it down into cost per unit for each section. So 128K and 64K. And I noted that this is the rebuild cost. It's not necessarily the initial build cost, but my understanding is those can be fairly similar, give or take here and there, depending on unique structural challenges with the site. So that is pretty much what I would speculate that's going to be part of the cost of the home. We'll get there in just a second. But when you divide that by the total period of time that the infrastructure is in place, to be able to pay that off over that 75 years, it'd be about $1,700 per single family home has to be raised and $850 per multifamily home. Yes, Chris?
So if we look at this then, I mean, I know what my property tax bill is every year.
Yeah.
And let's just say it's 10 grand, which is probably way low. That's $750,000 in property tax bills for each property. I know it doesn't all go to the city.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a lot more than $128,000 just on property tax bills alone without taking into account the other assets that a development would bring in.
Right. It's significant. Sorry, are you saying this is a significant portion or the tax money that comes in?
I'm saying that even if you just say 10 grand a year on each of these single family homes,
yeah,
which nobody pays 10 grand a year on brand new homes for property taxes on a yearly basis, which will go up, but we'll just use today's numbers like you're using. Yep. 75 years times 10 grand is $750,000.
Yeah.
Realizing that doesn't all go to the city.
I know.
I would still say that it's more just in property taxes alone that the city would recoup than $128,000 per unit over 75 years.
So this is factoring in the, no, that's a straight value. It's 128 divided by 75. We'll get to that in a second. How much it's going to bring in.
I mean, you have it at $1,700 per year. That's what I'm saying. So yeah. I'm saying that per year, the city's probably pulling in more in their portion of the property taxes on each home than $1,700. So there's more than $1,700 alone in property taxes without taking into account any other factor as it relates to this particular table.
That's what the next slide is for. I did that calculation. How much would a home of a given price bring into the city in property tax? So to bring in $1,700, a single family home would have to be worth a little under $600K. For the amount for the $800 or so for the multifamily home, it would be a little under $300K for that. I also add sales tax here, and that's a very rough value. It would need to be like $85,000 in household retail spending, assuming a 2%, sales tax rate there for the city portion, 43K for the multifamily home. And it'll be some combination of these. So those are kind of the hard numbers to pay for the road, or at least to bring in that much money for property tax or sales tax. We'll get a bit of both. But again, this is just kind of to give like an idea of what amount of development is necessary to cover that is entailed. And I do want to also, yes, Alice?
It's Robin.
That's Robin.
I get nervous up here. Sorry, Robin.
No, that's okay. Okay, so I'm just looking at the single-family home value and the multifamily home value. The single family might be pretty close. I don't know if you're gonna get, I mean, if you could, like 297 seems really conservative for a brand new multifamily home in that area.
My
Oh, they're
house
gonna
is
be
worth
higher.
over
I have
300,000
some
right now.
numbers.
My house is worth over 300,000. I live in a duplex.
Looking in like just in the new development in the
Yeah.
area and what the multifamilies are going for, I think 287 would be very conservative.
And my neighbors is the same. I keep track. I'm a little bit more than her.
And then also something to think about is if this is happening every year over 75 years, there will be the appreciation in those home values too, and thus the tax rate will be applied to that greater home value.
Right.
And imagine 75 years ago what our homes were worth.
But then,
Well, but my home, and maybe
That's
Abby's,
where-
yours
yeah.
has probably been around for 75 years.
that kind of goes around back to the construction cost question though, because higher home values are part of the inflationary environment we're talking about. So that will likely be offset by the higher construction costs just due to the cost of living being higher as well. It's hard to get out ahead. Obviously, those don't necessarily line up perfectly, but that's a whole field of study about whether or not they do. Jim? Jim has his hand up again.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. Dustin, I mean, just sitting back and look at presentation. I mean, when you do this type of analysis, I mean, you want to see it trended over time up front, right? I mean, we're kind of going through a journey of discovery here, but we're already poking holes in this thing. So my question is, can we jump to the, so we got to the end, right? So if you were to say, hey, let's keep the analysis within your lifetime. Sorry, so over the next 30 years, is Batavia going to be net accounting for inflation, accounting for gross household income, accounting for what they're going to contribute on a sales tax level, on a paying utility level, just all those things a household brings to the table? I mean, do you have that as part of this?
Not in this presentation. I have limited time to develop all of this, and I didn't have at the time good numbers for what the homes would bring in tax until the past week or so. I wanted to make that analysis. I just didn't have the data when I was really digging into this. It'd be a good analysis to make, though. I will say very likely, again, in the short term, this would be, I would say, net positive. I'd be curious at the cost of taking care of Winmouth Road will be, because I didn't factor that into this at all. But this is more playing the long game. And in the long game, I have concerns about it meeting that. Later in the presentation, I do give like what the expected home values will be. That will help answer some of that. But it's more of like, near term versus far term like analysis. Near term, it will be positive, I think, depending on impact on city services, which I'm not convinced was going to be too terrible, but that's much fuzzier math that I wasn't willing to like put down concretely here. But long term is where I have some more concerns. My current standpoint is it will probably break even, but we'll get there in a second. Kevin, you had your hand up?
It sounds like you're going to address what I wanted to ask questions about and talk about, so I'll let you kind of continue and then jump in in a minute.
One last point about this. So far, we're just talking about the road. We're not talking about the increased police coverage area. That's going to be additional cost of some amount. I don't have a good number for that. I added fire EMS calls here. We do cover that area now, but there aren't currently 125 homes there, so that will be an aspect of it. Street services, so snow plowing, street cleaning. I don't even think crack fill is included in that, so all of those are also need to be factored in. Like I mentioned before, I didn't include utilities in there as well at all, and those have their own funds. Whether or not those make sense is a analysis of its own that I wasn't prepared to make for this service, so I'm not including them broadly here. And all other city services we have. The top three are obviously the highest ones, but something to consider. Expected housing prices. So again, thanks to Abby for getting us information from the developer. The developer is planning the homes to be worth, give or take, about $1 million. I think there's a range of about $200,000 plus or minus. So we can average $1 million per single family home and about $450,000 per multifamily home, which I think those are pretty reasonable. Those are reasonable assumptions because we're seeing similar housing costs with some other new developments around town. So those do meet at least the minimum threshold for the roads. Whether how well the increased need for city services adds to that, I don't have a good number, but this very well might even out to be roughly break even is kind of my take based on this analysis. And I think that's my last slide actually. So, Kevin?
Yeah, so first off, thank you for putting this all together. This is actually really helpful. And we can kind of talk about, do the numbers make sense? Do they not make sense? But I think the overall narrative that I'm hearing here is, as I'm thinking of making this decision, it's important that I remember that this isn't free development, right? Yeah. That developments come with legacy costs that are going to be stuck with the city for 75, 100, hopefully they're very well-built homes and we're plowing these streets for 200 years, right? Right? Who knows? So that's kind of the narrative that I take away here. And so as I'm looking at this and thinking on this, I'm also beginning to wonder kind of what are the further out costs, right? I pulled up Google Maps. I'm taking a look here. We're going to connect in with Cambridge. It's called something else at that little curve. I apologize, I forget the name at the moment. But that's going to take some wear and tear. Skyline Drive does not currently connect down. And so we're going to get some wear and tear kind of going Andrews down to Hanford, up to Branson, over to Fabian, right? So there's sort of a lot of wear and tear that's coming along with this.
Traffic, yeah.
And traffic. With the current numbers, though, it does seem like it kind of it breaks even from a financial standpoint if we're hitting those $1 million home marks and those 500,000, 450.
It's very possible. And I do it sounds like the developers worked with the city a lot to better understand the city's current infrastructure capabilities. The fact that so many of that all the single family homes are on septic goes a long way, because my understanding is to increase sewerage capacity out here, would we need a new lift station? Is that it? We need some expansion in sewage capacity in this area to give everybody sewer access. Yes. Oh, go ahead. But the point is, I feel like this is considerate of the infrastructure that's there largely in that capacity. So I'm good with that. Yep.
There is no more capacity for sanitary in this area. We have already allocated it. Trotter has done studies of that west area, and it's all tributary to downstream, and that's where the capacity is. And it's overall citywide, but there's restrictions downstream. So we have certain capacity even along Hawks Drive and Fabian for those developments that have gone back and forth with incoming development inquiries and kind of juggling the PE, but this is the amount that's allocated for this parcel. And there is no additional capacity that we can do at this point.
That's good to factor in, and it tells me that what we're putting here makes sense with the capabilities we have, more or less.
And I want to make sure I understand that correctly as well. We couldn't connect it to sewage even if we wanted to. Like, we just don't. It's just sort of an impossibility given our infrastructure.
We are going to connect with the multifamily at the stub that's down, I think, on Cowth Road, down there, Avenue. But beyond that, the development that is proposed with that type of use will utilize the 220 remaining population equivalents.
I think your question is, can more capacity be created?
Can more capacity be created?
No.
Sort of like hard no.
Okay. You wouldn't build an apartment building out there and be able to handle that.
Yeah.
What was that, Alan?
You wouldn't be able to build an apartment complex out there with 500 or so units and be able to handle that. It can only handle what's currently in the development plan.
Correct.
And so if we approve a development out here, we have to be okay with septic forever.
Yes.
Okay.
Or half and half, like this is, where the multifamily is all tributary to gravity sewer, and then the single family has the larger lots to accommodate for the septic requirements.
Yeah. Hey, it's Jim. I apologize for interrupting. I'm on septic forever. It's a huge deal. It's great. You save a ton of money doing it. I hope I never get off septic the rest of my life. So, just want to throw that in there.
I grew up on septic too, so we're kindred spirits there.
Yeah, I just want to offer some insight here. This conversation was held once before. I think didn't you come and talk to the council once before about the idea here?
I don't believe the space.
Well, somebody
It's been a
did.
while.
If it wasn't you, there was somebody in. And that conversation got noted or was watched on TV. And I received a phone call from, I would describe him as a very prominent, now retired Batavia official. And he proceeds to tell me that they are watching this development with great interest because the neighborhood out there is being nicely developed. It's got good homes. The homes are increasing in value, and they're not really too interested in having smaller units in their neighborhood or, organizing. So he said, I'm not opposing anything right now, but he says, I want to tell you, if something finally does get put together and you has to come before the city council and vote, he says, I think we will fill the room and have a lot of questions about it if it goes forward. Because there's a lot of strong interest about what's going on here. And you have to appreciate that some of this property out there is long time, but old Batavia family home property. And, the one classic example of that is saving the original home that was out there and making that huge, large lot, which, kind of puts a sense out there of what the neighborhood is all about. And to come in and say, we're going to put in, 150 new single-family attached homes or low-income homes or whatever, I would suggest that's not going to be easily done here at a one city council meeting, because I've been promised we'll have a big crowd here of interest if, in fact, this thing gets put on paper with some strong activity behind it.
Yeah, and for me, the real question is annexation or not, because I do agree this scale of development does correspond with the infrastructure we have in place. So I'm not making any grander proposals than this. It's mostly just doing the analysis of whether it makes sense for the city to annex or not. And I'm not going to make a firm determination here. I think it's, for me, kind of on the bubble. Knowing that we'll be responsible for Winmouth Road, that portion anyway, gives me a little more heartburn, but that's my perspective. This is just giving the numbers as I have available to me. Abby?
Your 593,000 needed for the road, is that the market value or that was your assessed value?
Market value.
Because at a 1 million market value home, the assessed value is 33% of that.
Yep.
Okay.
That's factored in.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Everything's market value
Okay.
here.
I'll say after I read through this, the thing I get right here is it's the balancing scale of we need density in other places where we don't have as much infrastructure to serve it to be able to have this type of a product in town. That has to be that balancing act. And that's something that I know we have talked about, former councils have talked about for years, that's really the reality that we're in. And the problem is at this point is that it's harder to build higher density and make the profit that the developers want to make. I don't want to make developers mad, but that's the reality of it. To build something that you can have lower infrastructure costs on, the profit isn't there. $1 million house versus, a $200,000 or $300,000 townhouse or condo unit or an apartment just doesn't pan out the same way for them. And that's been, I think, the classic problem in this area for about the last 50 years. So, I grew up out there. I used to sneak in and out of that property on a snowmobile, on a motorcycle. I know what it was like out there. And it's preserved on the other side of Winmouth Road, all the way through to the Dick Young Forest Preserve, Jungles Farm that's out there that's now part of the Forest Preserve. So there is really some very nice areas out there. And then Peck Farm, of course, to the north. All of that is out there. So, I think it's a very desirable area to have something like this built in it. And there's a lot of infrastructure costs that go along with a big development like this. But I also don't want to see it developed in the township or in the county and then have no control over it.
Abby?
Back.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Dustin as well. I think this type of analysis needs to be done every time we do some sort of development like this. I think it should go further to include the other utilities that we're talking about, the other services that we're talking about, to make sure that the full scope is being paid for. We've talked about it before. City staff has said it before. Subdivisions have historically not paid for themselves. Their infrastructure costs more than the tax the city gets to pay for that infrastructure long term. We have seen this in our road program falling behind in our maintenance and our reconstruction. We've seen it in our tax rate raising debates that we've had over the last couple of years, that we are now raising our rates on our existing citizens to pay for infrastructure we put in the 80s and 90s, because the stuff we built on that infrastructure didn't pay for it. So the question that Dustin is posing is a fair one. This is a conversation we have to have with every new discussion, with every new development that we have. And so I just wanted to thank you again for doing the preliminary. I think it should be baked into the memos. It should be baked into every discussion at a higher level and a more in-depth level than Dustin can do over Christmas break.
Fair. Yeah, my family wanted to talk to me a few times, so it was kind of annoying. I will say there are also financial organizations out there that can do these sort of pro forma analyses for cities. That's an increasingly growing industry for these larger developments. And this isn't a huge one, to be fair. I remember hearing recently that it was up in Huntley or Hampshire. They're putting in like 2,800 units all at once. We'd be having a much longer conversation if that was this. This at least has the benefit of being a smaller development, so it's not an entire expansion of town all at once. So when we do hit that 75-year mark, we're not like hitting a cliff, we're hitting a bump perhaps. That goes a long way as well. But yeah, there are organizations that do that, and I do agree. It'd be good just to do this sort of analysis, to know what we're getting ourselves into in terms of new liabilities, along with new opportunities, new revenue sources. Obviously, it's difficult to get hard numbers, especially with something like sales tax that can vary a lot more per household. I don't know. I tried to find if there's a metric for like sales tax expected generation for a given household size or cost. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but I couldn't find a paper on it.
Seems to me that I've seen something like that when it comes to retailers and how they locate into an area.
Oh, that would be a good
when they look for that. They look at median incomes and how that's spent within a certain geographical area before they'll locate, another Starbucks, another Target. That's how they figure that out.
Yeah, it's pretty typical. They look at population circles, they look at density circles, they look at value and income. So those are things that, when I've gone to shopping center shows, those are things that they look at and say, okay, in your 3, 5, and 10 mile circles, you've got X amount of population and here's how much money they make. And if they don't meet those thresholds, then they're not interested in locating in that area. So that is something that, retailers do look at, and that's one of their main criteria they look at for, whether they go to a certain area or not.
But to the sales tax point, a neighborhood like this, everyone's going to have to get into their cars to drive to go anywhere. It's going to have a walk score of 0. They're on the edge of Geneva. There's no guarantee and no reason to believe that they're going to shop in Batavia. They're going to go either way, 50-50 chance. So there's a good chance we don't even capture the sales tax that we would love to capture out of a neighborhood like this.
And as a counterpoint to that, just going to throw it out there, if we don't annex and this still develops, we'd get the same amount of sales tax at the end of the day. Again, not a hard point, but a point to reckon with.
If I may, when we were doing our budget analysis, we identified that for the state median income, which is about, or the Kane County median income, which is about $115,000 roughly, the average family spends about $55,000 on taxable goods a year. So if you extend that out to $1 million home and what the income needed for that, it's roughly a family will spend about half their income. That excludes housing, excludes medical. So it's on things that are essentially taxable, groceries, food, et cetera. So that's the rate of taxation roughly, and the percentages we would get from that, et cetera.
If we go back to a previous slide, that's roughly in line with the sales tax needed to cover like this space infrastructure. So something to consider.
Yes, it may not be ideally walkable,
Right.
but would I want to have to go out onto Fabian to get anywhere to go shopping, or would I like to go through the neighborhood and come out right into the parking lot to go to Aldi or to go to, wherever I want to go along Randall Road? Since Branson's been done, my doctor's office is off of Fabian. I don't go out on Randall if I don't have to, especially if it's middle of the day or it's a Saturday or anything else. I use, Main Street to Deer Path to Branson and come in the back way. It's much easier than sitting at a stoplight for 5 minutes of the trip.
Stop sharing. Sure.
Just one last comment. So Dustin, it seems that according to your analysis, because the development is higher end with the single family homes being around $1 million and that this particular development does feel like it will pay itself off.
It'll roughly break even.
Yeah.
I'll make the broader comment. It's kind of wild that it needs to be $1 million home to do so, but that's what, that's how the market is. And in this case, it does. So it's kind of a likely no harm, no foul.
And you feel confident for that across the board, it pays for itself, not just the roads?
I don't have solid numbers on how this is anticipated to impact city services. Like I said, that is a fuzzier level of math, and it's very dependent just on who moves in. It is on the edge of town, which can impact response times, but it's also next to Fabian, so it's relatively easy to get there compared to maybe some other locations. There's too many variables for me to give a solid analysis there. I know city staff likes to sort of mentally break up infrastructure cost with service cost by a sales tax versus property tax. So like sales tax ideally covers infrastructure property. Am I getting that backwards? We have like, it's not like a hard and fast model, but that's
It's more so for big projects.
Yeah.
So we've identified like the sales tax in the past has been used to fund the fire departments,
Right.
as well as what we're intending to use for the police department. And that generally also, obviously, a significant portion of the revenues we get do go to the general fund for general governmental purposes. Property taxes don't make up all of our revenues. It's a lot of sales tax. It's governmental funds for motor fuel tax. It's all these other things too. So that all contributes. Plus, we're always collecting, the utility fees we collect. We do our long-term studies and raise and set rates accordingly. Same with water and electric. That's exactly what we're doing with the Brattle study. Trotter has full analysis for us, and then EEI has those for our water programs too. So on the utility side, we keep a good eye on long-term costs and making sure that we're setting rates and having things to cover that. So, when we build stuff like this, that all gets factored in some way into our long-term planning, and we update our spreadsheets, we update our models to account for what these entail.
And also keep in mind, we also get head taxes every year. So when our population increases, we get additional head taxes. So based on the population that's generated here, we're going to get annual, head taxes for that. And then a lot of times for the roads, we use motor fuel tax or other grant funds that come and pay for redoing some of the roads. So when that happens, we're not getting Batavia taxpayer money per se for that. So that helps add and reduce the cost of the roads.
So this is the sales property and sales tax are the biggest contributors, but those also do help fill in some of those gaps.
So maybe the direction would be that in the future, when we have development projects that come in, we'll hire a consultant to do both an economic impact analysis and then also an analysis of whether the expected property taxes generated over the course of 75 to 100 years will be sufficient to support the infrastructure and services.
I'd like to know how much the consultant would cost before we nailed that down,
I was about to say that.
But I definitely agree. We want to make sure that it's a service that scales appropriately with the situation, but it's something to look into.
That's something that could be a development cost by the developer also. We could make that, a requirement of, just like a landscape plan or whatever, we could say, okay, you need to provide a fiscal impact study as part of your development submittals. So
I think what we're talking about is like a $50,000 study here.
It I don't know if it would be that much even. It would probably be less depending on what it is, depending on the scope.
Like positive economic impact analysis, but the infrastructure analysis is going to be probably as much of analysis. You know, when I look at what we're spending with Brattle Group in terms of trends and projections over the course of a long time.
I need to get this back into the public hearing that we're trying to do on this property and not digress into a very good discussion I think we need to have, and I think it's great information that Dustin has provided for us, but I don't think we need to keep going on this in this area tonight.
I was just going to say, I mean, we're talking about this particular development, and now we're delving off into things where I don't even know if there's even property, as the mayor has even said. Where are we going to build big subdivisions anyway? I mean, we're talking about things that probably are unlikely to even maybe occur in the 75 years of the rest of your lifetime, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't, there's no big places we're building anymore.
That's true. That's very valid.
Yeah, and just to follow, piggyback on that, totally agree. First off, I hope you live more than 75 years. Medical technology is great these days. But maybe staff could have a conversation on what an appropriate, you know, it sounds like there's some different options. You guys have some different opinions. Maybe you guys could have that conversation and come back to us about what, I don't know, is it $20,000 a 50? Should we have developers? Should we have this? And again, yeah, let's kind of turn back back to this property here.
Yeah. So that's
Thank you. Okay, no other questions from the council. We'll go to the public side of it. If anybody from the public wants to address us during this public hearing over this development, come on up, use the mic. All we need is your name.
Good evening. I'm Chris Lannert. I'm the planning consultant for the Thompson Family Trust. I've been working with them for a number of years, and this is really a significant opportunity for you to make a decision to have this farm become part of the community, and there will be substantial tax benefits that kind of go along with the other thought process that we've had going through this process. So I'd like to just go through a quick presentation. You've already heard a lot of stuff, but let me tell you how we got here and why this is a good plan for your strong consideration. Can I flip the slides or? I want to go to the aerial photo, the site analysis, concept plans that were part of the package.
Okay, yeah. Do you know what page that's on?
42? Start at 42. Exhibit E.
It's on 42. 43 was the one we had up there, right there.
Yeah.
And keep going down to the beginning. Because you should have a site analysis and an aerial photo. I think that.
73, I think, is an aerial photo. 72.
Goes even slower on an old tablet.
While they're putting that up on the screen, the Thompson family members are here, two of them on the video screen, and Wallace sitting here in the audience. And again, they have been instrumental in terms of the development of this project because they grew up on this farm. They've been long-term residents of the community, and again, very instrumental in terms of what we're doing. I'll go through these pretty quickly because, again, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with the property. But the significant thing on this particular issue is the pink line that goes through this subject site. That is the school district line that we've talked about before, and we are in conversations with both the Batavia and Geneva School District as it relates to making sure the kids go to the right schools at the right time. The other significant thing is the green area to the left of that slide is all forest preserve. And on the north side, which is not quite within the frame, is all of the Peck Farm. So this is really a jewel in terms of a great piece of property that's surrounded by open space and other types of things that enhance the value of this site. On the upper corner, right above the pink line and adjacent to the green line, it's outlined in black. That's your water treatment plant. And so through the annexation of this particular property, you'll be able to connect that site to the community. The other district line in blue on the right-hand side of the thing is the Park District line because we are all in the Geneva Park District, not in the Batavia Park District. But obviously we want to be part of this community. You can see its proximity to Randall Road, and all of these things will make for a good piece of a gateway for your community. Go to the next slide. Because this is all, grounded in what the carrying capacity of the land is, we always look at a site analysis. And this is an example, an exhibit that kind of shows what it is. The red stars indicate the high points of the property. The orange lines indicate where the ridge lines are. Those high points and ridge lines start to talk to the drainage area, and that is encompassed in your drainage laws, and we have to make sure that we accommodate and do not increase any of the water that comes off the site before the development or after the development. The arrows indicate those surface water flows. That green swath in the upper left-hand corner is the tributary from the Peck Lake release that comes across the corner of this property under Windmouth Road and into the Forest Preserve property, and then over ultimately to Mill Creek. The vegetation is shown with the trees outlined and shaded. You can see there's two major tree lines, one going east and west just below the outlot, and then one on the south property line where the floodplain line and the wetland lines meet. And then there's significant vegetation adjacent to the outlot, which again, we're all trying to protect all of those things. The pictures on the right-hand side show you snapshots of those areas that depict what I've just talked about. And tree preservation and the natural elements have been part of this since the very beginning. The low point is a little yellow star in the lower left-hand corner. And the bottom line is the wetland line, which was delineated on site, and the dashed line above it is the floodplain line. Those are important features because as you go to the next plan, which is the concept plan, we've taken those things into consideration by tapering our densities and blending the densities from the open space areas and the lower areas up to the highway, which is Fabian Parkway. The east-west roadway, which is shown in black with the arrows going north and south, we were given that challenge as it relates to one of the site parameters, is we've got an existing road stub on the east, and then we only have one good point as it relates to Windmouth Road for access. As you've all been up and down Windmouth Road, you're up and down Windmouth Road. So you can't access Windmouth Road except at a high point which has good visibility both north and to the south. And I will, at this juncture, point out that the widening of Windmouth Road in its intersection with Fabian Parkway has been contemplated by the county for a number of years, and we will be dedicating an additional 30 feet of roadway adjacent to Windmouth Road from your well site up to Fabian Parkway to accommodate the plans that they have for the reconstruction of that area. And the reason there are no, while we're talking about KDOT, the reason there's no access points on the Fabian is because in our conversations over 2.5 years, they have been unrelenting in terms of changing their policies as it relates to those access points. So we have to work within those arrows on site to develop our plan. Next site, next plan. This is the plan that you've been looking at. There's also a color-coded copy of it. What we're endeavoring to do here, and I think you did touch very quickly but thoroughly on the 220 PE, which is the basis for the R3 zoning in the upper left-hand corner of the site. We will have multiplex building units there. We don't know exactly what they'll be, duplexes, townhouses, row houses, whatever, because the density, the underlying zoning of R3, which is recommended by staff, and the cap of a 220 PE is what's going to generate, in my way of thinking, the high quality development that multifamily district will be. It's backing up to Cambridge's cluster homes that they've done there have been very successful. The balance of the site are single-family homes split between the Geneva School District and the Batavia School District. Those are envisioned to be high-quality homes, 100-foot wide lots, 200 feet deep, so about 20,000 square feet. They will have public utilities, in terms of gas, electric, and water. But on those lots, as you did talk about, we will have septic systems. And the reason for that is because you don't have any capacity within the community for additional sewer, and we want to be part of the community. We want to be part of Batavia. So we feel that this was a good compromise. Again, worked out diligently with staff over a number of months as it relates to this particular scheme. And we're very confident this product type will hit a niche that really is not available anyplace else in Batavia, and certainly within our marketplace. Previously, there have been lots of developments out in Kane County, which served high-end, large lot residential. These half-acre lots in your community, we think will be very valuable, and we think that an average price will probably be $1 million, probably $750,000 to $1.2 million, $1.3 million. So we just picked, in terms of the value that's generated by this property, $1 million as that point of reference. The bike path has been talked about across Fabian Parkway and down Windmouth. We'll end up doing that. The designation on the bottom shows that we are not touching the wetlands, so we will not be impacting the wetlands at all. We will not be affecting the floodplain. We're out of the floodplain, and our stormwater is in the appropriate place because it's at the bottom of the hill. There's, I want to say, 25 or 28 feet of elevational change from Fabian Parkway down to this part of the site. So we have good positive drainage, and all of these elements, work very well in terms of this, plan that we're presenting to you tonight. So that's kind of a quick capsulation of what we're doing and why we're doing, and the ability to accomplish a significant gateway for this community. Kate, did you want to say something?
Yeah, a couple things. Thank you, Chris. My name is Kate McCracken, MC, CRACKEN. I am the attorney for the Thompsons. And I do hear and respect the concerns relative to the cost of development, but I really want everyone to focus on this development. And specifically because this is not a function of suburban sprawl or a suburban experiment. This is, I don't want to lump this into anything else we have talked about relative to development. This is an extraordinarily unique proposal. This is a family who have responsibly and in a conscious, multi-generational focus are being stewards of a piece of property that they love. So I want to be careful we don't lump them into this whole sort of generic developer. They are not developers. They are simply trying to have the property entitled and entitled in a way that they would like to see it entitled, that respects the quality of the property, which I think we've all sort of touched on. This is not a function of we're going to try to squeeze a piece of property for as much density as we can. This is, we love this piece of property. We see what kind of benefits it can provide the community, and we want to be respectful stewards of that piece of property. So I want to be careful that we're not lumping this into generic development doesn't pay for itself. Quite frankly, this development is one of those, again, uniquely qualified pieces of property that will in fact pay for itself. And I think if we're going to talk about numbers, we have to be really, really careful that we're using correct numbers and professional analyses. There is a significant amount of tax dollars that's going, real estate tax dollars that are going to be generated from this development based on the prices, the correct prices. So I want to be just careful that we don't lump this into a whole bunch of other things and a whole bunch of historic mistakes that may or may not have been made. The owners of this property recognize that they have obligation to future generations, and the Thompsons have truly changed the conversation about growth and development. This is a function, and one that is unique in my experience, where I have an owner of a piece of property who is literally committed to responsible, reasonable density and land planning, taking into account all of the unique features of this piece of property. It is a beautiful piece of property. I'm glad that you've been there for rightly or wrongly.
50 years or more.
Yeah, I understand. This is truly a plan that has been a function of collaborative conversations with staff and with the city of Batavia, with the family who have been committed to seeing what means so much to them, including right down to saving trees that they had swings on. This isn't a function of, we're going to develop this and we don't care what happens. They care every day about what happens to this piece of property. So I'm just asking you all to take a step back and not think of this as, oh, this is just another person coming in to build a bunch of pieces of property and a bunch of houses. This is something completely different, and this is something, frankly, we don't see very often. So I'm just asking everybody to recognize that these are owners who have taken really serious consideration to everything that this piece of property has to offer. And this plan is really a function of tying future generations to what this piece of property should be. Any questions?
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address us on this? Okay, no other comments? Close the public hearing. And are we going to vote on these now? Is that what we want to do? So we'll bring these up one at a time. Ordinance 2026-002, authorizing the execution of an annexation agreement between the City of Batavia, Chicago Title Land Trust Company, not individually, but as successor land trustee to ATG Trust Company under Land Trust number L006084.
So moved.
Motion by Solfa. Second. And second by Lancy. Roll call, please.
Barraza.
Aye.
Lancy.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Malay.
Abstain.
Malone.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Aye. Lohman.
Aye.
Pieper.
Aye.
Fehrenbach.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
White. So that's 11.
One, that'll go to council with positive recommendation. Number 2 tonight is ordinance 2026-003, amending the land use plan or land use map of the comprehensive plan of the city of Batavia.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Solfa, second by Lancy. Roll call, please.
Barraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Malay.
Abstain.
Malone.
Aye.
Sulfa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman.
Aye.
Lohman.
Aye.
Pieper.
Aye.
Fehrenbach.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
White. This is 12 yes, 1 abstain.
We'll move on to going 3, which is ordinance 2026-004, annexing territory and zoning properties to the city of Batavia.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Silva, second by Lancy. Roll call, please.
Barraza. Aye. Lancy.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Malay.
Abstain.
Malone.
Aye.
Sulfa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Lohman.
Aye.
Pieper.
Aye.
Fehrenbach.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
White. It's 12 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you. That will all go on the regular agenda for next Monday night, correct? All right, thank you. Okay, and we'll go right back to 7.2, the discussion on the update on the Route 31 road diet.
Evening, everybody. Just wanted to give a quick update before I pass this along to Matt from GFT. We just wanted to provide a quick status update on the Illinois Route 31 road diet. We finished the original part of the road diet back in 2024. Currently, we're in preliminary engineering for the rest of the project. The focus now is more on the pedestrian and the bicycle crossings, crossing especially, obviously, Route 31 through the downtown segment. And basically, what we're going to be presenting tonight is the work that has been going on since the original segment was finished, and then coordination that we've had with IDOT since then. So additional analysis has been done between Millview and then all the way up to McKee, discounting the rest of the work that was previously done. And the construction that we will move forward with is ITEP funded. We have $1 million of funding that would be slated for a 2027 construction. So tonight, there's no formal decisions. This is just an update, but we'd like to have your feedback to see how we should be moving forward before we go back to IDOT with the recommendations, so we can wrap up preliminary engineering and start moving the project forward. 2027 construction is a very fast schedule, so we'd like to hopefully move forward as quickly as possible. So I have Matt here from GFT. He's got a little presentation to show where we're at, and then we'd like to hopefully hold questions until the end of the presentation, until he's finished. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Matt.
Thank you. Good evening. Got to get. Do I share on Zoom here? Oh. Here you go.
Bottom middle.
We're in the middle.
Bottom in the middle. Green button in the middle.
Thank you. What's that? Perfect.
One more time. You got to hit share.
This Teams at work. I'm not great with Zoom, so that's my excuse. All right. So this is actually my third presentation to the council, and so there's some new faces, some old faces. You guys have seen me for talking about this project. My name is Matt Baldwin. I'm a project manager at GFT now. We were formerly named Trans Systems, so that's why it might sound different based on previous presentations. So let's see. So we have an office in Geneva. We lead dozens of these local infrastructure improvements like this. We led the Prairie and Wilson award-winning APWA project right down the street. Tim's going to talk about Hubbard Avenue in a little bit, which we're excited to get started on. And we've been involved with this project for several years now. So brief project background, Illinois 31 has been a barrier for the community, which you guys are well aware of, especially for bicycle and pedestrian traffic heading in the east-west direction. There have been multiple pedestrian bicycle crashes along the corridor. Additionally, in the city's bike plan, several of the east-west crossings were identified as high priority improvements along this corridor. And so as Tim noted, we're all familiar with the road diet, which is the restriping of this corridor all the way down from Mooseheart up to Fabian, where it's converted from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. That's what we're talking about with the road diet, with changing the lane configuration. And so now we're really focused on what to do at some of these key crossing locations, and that's what we recently had a working meeting with IDOT to talk through. And so this was initiated several years ago, and it started as a feasibility study. I was talking to Laura before the meeting, and we were kind of laughing that this project really started before that too, where the city presented this to IDOT 10 plus years ago, and they said no chance. And so it's nice to see where we're at in this whole process, that we've already implemented a portion of these improvements, and now we're looking at additional safety and connectivity improvements. So let's see. So Tim mentioned the ITEP funding, which I do want to reiterate. We worked with the city to submit that application back in 2023. It was awarded in March of 2023 and has a 4-year sunset date. So that basically means that the project has to go to letting or be programmed within that 4 years.
there is one 6-month extension that's allowed. So we're generally targeting that March of 27, but there is one 6-month extension that are allowed to be pushed back a little bit. That's the one that we get, the only one that we get. So time's of the essence as it relates to this project. So the latest update, let's jump into that. After updating our analysis from the previous study, we incorporated staff feedback as we've been working with the city on this project hand in hand, sent a memo to IDOT, which included a corridor alternative. So there's been a lot of different configurations that have been considered along this corridor. So working with staff, we sent what we thought was a preferred alternative for them to consider, and then we had a working meeting to determine what was viable based on IDOT, because this is their route. They do have jurisdiction. They get ultimate say when it comes to the improvements along the corridor. So tonight our goal is to present the proposed corridor, get council's feedback, and I was going to present kind of each location just real briefly with an overview of what are the existing conditions, what are we considering at each location, and then maybe at the end we can kind of circle back and answer any questions as it relates to each location. So we have this exhibit here, and it's a little tough to see in terms of what's proposed at each location. We do have a blow up of each crossing as we navigate the corridor. And so I'm starting at the south end, which is this Millview map right here. And as you know, it's just signage only right now. And so we considered several different alternatives at this location. And what we're proposing is actually an RFB location, which is the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, but with an overhead beacon as well. And so that will be triggered at the same time and be active. As we talked with IDOT, this is their preferred alternative too. You used the term hawk before, hawk signal at this location. It's not something that IDOT is really a big fan of when it comes to traffic control at a crossing like this, but the elevated improvement of more than just an RFB is to have that overhead signage, which would also have a rectangular flasher as well. And so that's actually shown in the middle of this exhibit right here as an inset. So that would be what the configuration would look like. And the reason for that is increased visibility. The state's had a lot of really good feedback and seen a lot of safety improvements with the couple of installations that they've put in along state routes with this type of configuration. And so with the vertical curve and the visibility issues on the south approach and the higher speeds, we think this is a great alternative at this location. So that's Millview. I'd be remiss if I forgot too, we recognize this is a very high priority crossing. There's bike lanes along Millview Drive now, which have been implemented during the duration of this project. There's also the Fox River pedestrian bridge that's going in here. So we anticipate that pedestrian improvements are going to increase. One of the other positive outcomes of this conversation, as IDOT said, go ahead and look at signal warrants again. I know that's something the city council has brought up in the past, and so that's an opportunity that we have to revisit based on current traffic and the 3-lane configuration, which actually works to the city's benefit. 3-lane configuration, the signal warrants are a little lesser when compared to a 4-lane configuration. So that's another positive outcome here and something that we can look at moving forward. Between Midway Drive and Bernadette is the one segment of sidewalk along this corridor that's missing. It's the one gap. So as part of the scope, that's something we're looking to implement and connect that sidewalk between those two side streets. And that would be continuous all the way then from Millview up through the downtown segment, up past McKee. And so it would improve connectivity along here. IDOT didn't have any objections to that sidewalk implementation. They just said, please make sure that you're following our guidelines when it comes to setbacks and design criteria and evaluating easements for any of the driveways that are through there. So that's something that we would include to look at along the corridor. Navigating to the north and looking at Morton and Union, there's currently RFBs, which we just talked about at each one of those locations. We're not proposing to do anything with those other than to evaluate curb bump outs, which would take away the 2 to 3 foot marked shoulders that are through that area and reduce the crossing lengths. They're shown in these pictures right here. Obviously, shorter crossing lengths. The intent is to reduce the time that the pedestrians would be in the crossing by eliminating 6 feet or so that they would have to cross at each one of those locations. Because Union Avenue is another one of those high priority crossings and used to access the quarry, we'd be looking at that overhead RFB again for that configuration as well to improve sight distance and visibility of that crossing for PEDs at that location. I'm going to bypass the downtown section because I think it's going to lead to a little more conversation or thought relative to the proposed improvements and bounce up to McKee here. We were considering, this is another complex, has a lot of history behind it. There was a crossing on the south side previously. There was also an RFB there. Those have been removed since, partially because of the history of RFBs in terms of approvals, but also with the safety concerns that are associated with that location. We're recommending to put in a new RFB installation on the north approach. It takes away the conflict with eastbound right turning movements from McKee, where there's typically free flow where people are looking to the left and turning right at the same time. It reduces that conflict and would make it a safer movement. We evaluated looking at a raised median there, but it's not going to work well with the truck movements that are on that side street. So we had that conversation with IDOT, and they said they're in support of having another overhead installation with an RFB at that location as well. I know there's some concerns from staff about visibility and safety there. So once again, that's where we're going with the highest recommendation when it comes to safety and visibility. Popping into the downtown, we have, it's a sensitive clicker. Moving from Main Street, this is an inside exhibit of showing this stretch of some of the configurations that we looked at. It's a wide footprint through this area, so that in order to implement a road diet, we were looking at how could we change the curb lines to take away some of that shoulder and actually provide a new edge to the lanes so that we can help motorists navigate this corridor. One of the options we looked at Main Street, there's obviously a large skew there. So we looked at radii and softening that skew by changing the geometry, and that's what we're showing on the screen right here. It would align the traffic better from north to south, which is on the table. The one thing that IDOT asked us to look at was a median concept. So instead of putting the curb lines only on the outside, looking at putting a wide landscape median potentially through there just for a segment, not restricting turn movements necessarily through that, especially for the residences. We want to stop it short of any of the residential impacts. But looking at how we could modify the lane configuration a little bit to reduce those lane widths. So a roundabout was thrown out as an option. You guys might have heard that was under consideration. We're moving forward. We've dismissed the roundabout due to the impacts at this location. So that's not under, and that's not an alternative that we're considering moving forward. But this is what the road diet would roughly look like at this location with 3-lane configuration and some curb modifications of some sort in order to facilitate it. Going down to Wilson Street, which is shown on the bottom panel right here. We've evaluated several different configurations at this location, and we keep kind of bumping into the fact that without 4 lanes of capacity, we're really struggling to make the operations work. This is already a location where queuing on Wilson Street is a challenge. It's something that IDOT said they've gotten calls before. We know the city's heard that concern raised in the past. And so in order to implement a road diet all the way through the downtown, we're really having a challenge to do that without making some kind of capacity concession. And so IDOT took it upon themselves to look at a westbound right turn lane on Wilson Street and widening that, which would result in parking impacts, which we can show in a second here, in order to make the operations work at that intersection. And it turns out there's so many westbound right turning lanes in the peak hours that adding a right turn lane there would allow the road diet to extend all the way through the downtown. The challenge is there's parking on both sides of the street, one on the Everdeen side and the other one on the library side, and there would have to be an impact there in order to widen and implement that westbound right turn. And so we've taken just a very high level look at that. It doesn't necessarily work if we impact the Everdeen's parking because it becomes way too tight in the northeast corner. We won't be meeting PROAG criteria in terms of turning or distances there, and then also with widths of sidewalk. And so it would likely have to result in an impact on the south side of the street with the parking. And so what we're showing there is just we would have to modify some of the sidewalk, very high concept level drawing of what the stalls impacts would be and what the lane configuration would need to be in order to accommodate turning movements. IDOT is doing something that that they informed us they never do, and they actually would accommodate new parking stalls on Illinois 31 to offset parking impacts to the library. It's just not part of concessions that they typically make, but they see the value in the road diet improvement through this corridor. And they also don't like the configuration of doing a lane drop just south of Wilson Street. They think that that could propose or introduce new safety concerns. So their thought process to try and make all of this work was they'd be open to relocating some of that parking onto 31, which we show in this configuration. And so that's a lot when it comes to the improvements that I just dumped. And so I said we can circle back to that too. I do have a sim traffic video, which is, you guys have probably seen these in the past too, but demonstrates what the traffic is like with the full road diet versus what it would be like with the right turn lane during the peak hour operation. So I would like to share that real quick just to give you an idea of what it would look like. Okay. So this is the configuration with the full road diet. North is pointing up on the screen. And as you see on Wilson, the queuing extends all the way back to the river. It's actually going to go off the screen. We didn't want to zoom out too far, but on the right side of the screen, all those cars will queue up basically back to the river bridge. If we implement the road diet based on the simulation, which takes all the traffic. This is 2050 traffic that we're showing, but there's a very small growth between now and 2050. So this is like a 10% increase in current traffic that's reflected on here. And this is roughly how the road would operate during PM peak hour traffic. This is roughly 5:15 to 5:25. We took a snippet, sped it up 4 times just so we could view it and give you a sense of kind of what the queuing and the operations would look like. And so as you see, 31 generally operates okay. It extends off the screen up to the north, up towards Houston during some of the cycles, but for the most part, it's okay. Wilson on the east leg in particular, because of the heavy movement there, is substantial in terms of the queuing. You'll see colors on the screen. White are through movements for the vehicles, blues are left turns, and yellows are right turns. So when you see them queuing up and backing up, because they can't access the turn lanes, that's where those vehicles want to go in terms of making their maneuvers. All right. And this is where we said we were going to have challenges in escaping. Oh boy. Get it stopped before.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. And then this is the proposed alternative from IDOT, which implements a right turn lane on the right side of the screen, which is the east approach, the westbound direction. And you can see that the queuing is substantially less because it doesn't compound, provides access to the vehicles that want to make the right turns and left turns by providing that westbound right turn lane. And so the queuing is much less significant and allows a lot of the vehicles to get through during the intended cycle. So I just thought that this would be helpful to at least see kind of what the differences are in terms of the different lane configurations and kind of how the intersection operates. And certainly can answer any questions on this as well. And the last point is the schedule. So the history of this project is interesting. We focused on the feasibility study because IDOT had previously said no in terms of these improvements. We wanted to show them that it could happen. Through conversations and the initial study that we completed, they agreed that the project could move forward to evaluate exactly how to implement it. The downtown section's always been a little bit of a sticking point. There were the unfortunate pedestrian accidents that happened a couple of years ago, which really kind of lit a fire under the project in terms of implementing something in the short term. We worked to implement those pavement markings as part of a permit improvement, which basically means the city locally funded them and got IDOT to approve what was implemented along the corridor. So that was the focus. Now we've shifted back to these crossing locations that we talked about, the sidewalk connections. And I even failed to mention, I got so worked up that we're proposing a PED connection between Houston and McKee because that's the main bikeway at the north side of the corridor as well. So there's a couple other little improvements that we have in there too that would improve mobility through the downtown section. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and answer any questions.
Well, you just touched on my first one, which was what would Houston Street look like in terms of pedestrian? Would there be crosswalks? Would there be bump outs? And what would that connection look like between McKee?
Yeah, so Tim,
I got you.
come on. I'm really struggling.
You're good.
There we go. Well, right here is what would be a multi-use path that extends off the screen, but it's a little bit better view. Going in kind of the larger exhibit, you can see in the bottom right corner, there would be a multi-use path connection between Houston Street and McKee to that crossing that we were proposing. And so obviously there's bike lanes on Houston. There's proposed bike lanes on McKee. We're looking to connect that bikeway through a multi-use path. We presented that to IDOT. Once again, they didn't have any objections. They just noted that their standard path width is 10 feet. We had some discussions about the topography through that area, which is, even though Houston's obviously got a lot of grade change, it's pretty flat through that area. So looking to make that connection between there. There's also some opportunities with the downtown section because we're changing curb lines or even introducing medians to provide additional refuge locations for crossings, but also if we move the curb lines on either side, widen some sidewalks and potentially make them more pedestrian friendly type connections, go to more of like a 10, 12 foot or even 15 foot width. So we're considering those things in the downtown. It's all tied together, obviously. And so if we have a full road diet, it opens up a lot of capacity to make those types of improvements as well.
Matt, I would like to add, our takeaway from walking out of IDOT's office last week was they really wanted us to do that right turn lane to keep the capacity still the traffic moving through there. And if not, then we may have to look at other alternatives. We might not be able to implement the road diet through the downtown because, I felt that we'll let you do this, but you need to do that. So this is one of the main reasons I asked Matt to get the model from IDOT. They ran it and then he put it together to kind of show you and illustrate. And we had a few discussions with Matt and his team yesterday. This was a quick turnaround. I think it was Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know. All the days are blending. But last week that we were there and they're looking at these options that were thrown out there and the alignment of how Wilson Street can look and what impacts might occur if we were to get that right turn lane, a through lane and a left turn with removing some parking. So I know Matt said there's really no decisions, but I guess I would like your feedback on your thoughts on that. I know you guys want the road diet to go through the downtown. So that's kind of the feedback we're looking for too. And I'll let you guys ask any more questions.
I just have a couple of comments. So this is from a traffic standpoint, not a pedestrian standpoint, but I actually like the designated turn lanes at Wilson and Main Street. As somebody who drives through that area a lot, I think it would be helpful. And then this is just observational. So that parking you're talking about, that street parking on Wilson that butts up against the library, from observation, that's not library parking. Most of the people parking there are jaywalking across the street to go to Everdean's and those other shops and retail right there. So putting that parking actually up on Route 31 seems like a much safer option because people want parking there. They want parking to go to Thai Village. They want parking to get into Everdeens. So it keeps them all just right on that block. As I said, the people parking on that south side of Wilson, they're not using any of the retail or anything over there. They're crossing the street and not at the light often. So I personally don't necessarily have a problem removing that parking to add the added turn lane, just from observation. So, and then if the Hawk signal if IDOT is not going to allow that, then the overhead RFPs feel like the next best thing. And do you have, I was trying to remember up and down Route 31 and 25, where's another community that's currently using those?
Carpentersville? Yeah, IDOT had mentioned that they've implemented a couple recently, and they said that they've gotten a lot of positive feedback from them. We could certainly follow up with them and figure out which other state crossings and kind of do a compare and contrast to give you guys an idea of here's what your conditions are versus where they've implemented them. Mm-hmm. You know, they've certainly started to implement them more across the entire country. So it's a direction, because the Hawk is confusing to a lot of motorists in terms of it's red and then it's a dark red. And it doesn't necessarily comply with the state statute. And so that's been kind of the argument of where to implement them, and IDOT's pushback with them. So this certainly is what you'd say the next best, but honestly, I think it probably is the best alternative that you could have from a visibility and compliance standpoint.
Yeah, visibility, especially at the one at Millview, because the people who are coming northbound, they're coming up a hill, and it's a hard intersection to see.
Yeah, I do want to add, I drive this corridor consistently. My wife drives this to and from work every single day, so certainly invested in making this the safest corridor possible too, because she used to avoid it at all costs and go over to Kirk Road driving to work because it was so uncomfortable driving down this with 4 lanes, but now she drives it every single day, so.
Yeah, I also like the right turn lane idea. It seems to really help things up. Just on the model that that IDOT put together, kind of both a comment, question. One, it looked like the parking was removed on the north, my directions right, the north side, the Everdean side in that model. That was just scaling of the model. Was that? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Great.
Essentially, they were just putting the turn lane configuration in there, but not planning it on top of the roadway footprint.
Just wanted to make sure I was understanding that. Second, I'm sorry to.
I just wanted to. We did look at geometrically, like Andrea was saying, just to see how it all lines up. It actually fits much better, not only from a turn movement standpoint for that right turn lane to shift it south, but the skew of the intersection is naturally moving traffic to the south. So to push it north is counterintuitive to where drivers are aligned coming off that west leg. So everything is pushing it to the south. So
yeah, okay, great. Yeah, and Everdean's is a great restaurant. I love getting to it. It's just when I have to park on the other side to get to it. It's no good speaking to Leah's point. Also looking farther up, so in sort of what you've presented here, we're looking at 3 RFBs. Do I have that right? 3 RFBs, one at Millview, one at Union, and one at McKee. Does that sound right?
There's 2 existing right now. And so there would be 3 overhead and 1 current configuration with no overhead installation.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so IDOT has criteria in terms of how frequently you can place those. And so everything that we're proposing here too is compliant with what they would want to see from a spacing standpoint too. So that was one of the first things that we talked about, that the intersection spacing falls in line with their expectations in terms of spacing these out as well. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Was any more discussion had about that crosswalk crossing 31 at Wilson Street on the north side already being kind of a blind spot there in front of Thai Village with right-hand turns at the same time as the green light or the walk signal, making that more visible for people?
Yeah, and that's something that we'll have to be mindful of too. And one of my goals when we started this project was to reduce the total crossing width at that location. One, because there's almost no sight distance when it comes to that building. So we're going to be looking to push that curb line as far into the roadway as we can without having any kind of overlap with turning vehicles. So some of the things that we talked about were restricted movements and what the design vehicles should be, and that's kind of what the next stage of this would be, to really dial that in, because the more we can bump that curb out and reduce that crossing distance and improve visibility, I think the more we're going to improve the safety at that location as well. Additionally, the northbound through lane is going to go away, so we have the ability to bump that curb out, obviously. So it just comes down to those turn movements to see what we can fit in there.
Love it. So moved. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Well, and I just have an assumption, if the westbound Wilson, if that's a designated right-hand turn, then at least the pedestrians know that any cars sitting in that lane are turning their way. Because right now you're playing a guessing game. Like, are they going straight? Are they turning? So I think that it would help with the pedestrian side of things also, with understanding of what's even happening there.
Based on our initial look too, we're going to be able to move the curb out. It's just how much. And so we're just trying to balance that with the turn movements and with the geometry of the intersection. It's not a question of if we're going to be able to bump it out from where it's at right now. It's just how many feet.
And now kind of a comment I'm putting on my bike helmet here now. And as I'm biking downtown, I do cross at Houston at the moment. I don't go to McKee because McKee is dangerous. I don't like that intersection. And just as I'm looking at this, I'm not convinced that my decision making will change necessarily, even with a signal. I mean, of course, I'd have to see it, and make the decision right now. But the flashing lights just doesn't feel like enough for me to not move that one block up, where I have basically no protection, but I can gauge the timing a little better. And I know other cyclists I've spoken to also choose that Houston crossing due to the sight lines as opposed to McKee, even when it does have the lights. So just sort of my personal experience and something to consider that I'd like.
And totally understand that. And one of the biggest reasons for implementing the road diet was to get rid of the concern and the challenge that PEDS had previously of the 2 lanes in one direction and the lack of sight lines in terms of seeing that, right? And so we've implemented the road diet, at least at McKee, to the point where it is 3 lanes now, and so you only have to cross 1. That was the thought process with, man, it'd be great if we could get a median in here because you'd only have to cross 1 lane at a time. The challenge is we'd have to push it so far up to the north, and people are going to be even less likely to use that, and then they're just jaywalking across the street there anyway. So it's like, it certainly is a balance of all those factors to try and make it accommodating and safe. And so I totally hear what you're saying, but at least we've gotten to a point where it's only 1 lane of traffic in each direction that we're considering, and we can see what's coming towards us.
I'm sorry, one other thing that just popped in my mind. I had the opportunity to speak with some folks at the Homestead, and they have shared with us some concerns that as they're attempting to turn, they're heading northbound, attempting to turn left into the Homestead right before they get to Fabian there. The feeling has been that folks are pretty aggressive. They're beginning to speed up to try to hit that, right, left there. Just a piece of information to share with you, and if there's any things we can look at to sort of help our folks turning left into Homestead there.
That's certainly a challenge, and we did coordinate with KDOT, who has their ongoing study going on at 31 and Fabian there, and their initial response was, can you push the lane drop even further to the south, which causes that same challenge just further down the road in terms of that racing and navigating. And we're just not good at zipper merging for whatever reason as drivers. I still don't understand it, but totally understand, once again, that challenge at that location. I had a thought, and now it escapes me in terms of where I was going with that, other than the fact that I think KDOT's intersection improvements at that location will be coordinated with what we have going on there. There may be some additional improvements that happen as part of that project. They'll certainly be considering this as an existing configuration and see what makes sense with that intersection at that same time as well. So I wish I had a great solution there, but it is a challenge. I know where I was going with this, I'm sorry. All the more reason to consider, and I think this is the reason that came up before too, is that those lane drops are always a challenge, especially right at an intersection. That's why I think is pushing back on not wanting that lane drop in the middle of your downtown immediately south of Wilson, because you don't want to have that, introduce that same condition with higher pedestrian volumes and pedestrian movements. And that's, as Andrea mentioned earlier, kind of why they're looking at this as an all or nothing. Either we have 4 lanes through the downtown and they're comfortable with the lane drops being outside the downtown limits, or we're looking at something where we can have enough capacity at Wilson Street with that new right turn lane so that we can implement the road diet through the entirety of the section. So I got there, it took me a second, but it all came together.
But I wanted to bring up
Jim, I apologize. Oh, go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
Okay. The overhead, the rapid flashing beacons, I think we need to have overheads at any one of those that we have on 31 so that there's consistency. Because if we have it at all of them but one, that one is going to suffer and be a crossing that somebody's not going to want to use because they don't have the same feeling of security that they do at the other ones that have the overhead beacon. You know, I've thought all along that that was the way that should have been. It should have faced both ways the whole time, and it really didn't, because that was, to me, the real downfall of having 4 lanes was you could be blocked out by a van or a truck in the center lane and not know that there's somebody coming up in the outside lane. So I think that that's really important to have those flashers overhead at any one of those crossings. The other thing I wanted to mention was the section of 31, the east side of it from Main to First. I think we need to make sure that we think about that and coordinate that with any development that happens on that block. So I think that should be like the last piece that we try to bump that curb and make that, you know, wider there till we know exactly how that's going to get developed. So maybe that's the last little section that we do, because I think that's important not to have to do it twice in a year or two. So,
Alan?
2 cents.
With that, one of the options that IDOT kind of threw out at us, because the exhibits we brought with us were just striping on the pavement to keep the cars more in the center, was that we could keep the existing curb lane, but then introduce medians down the center of the roadway. So Matt and his team will be looking at the geometrics to make sure, or what that might look like. And they gave us some design guidelines where we could potentially put landscaping, trees can go in there. But again, there's design guidelines that we'd have to look at.
And I'm just thinking of access for it, for if there's a development there and they want to split the property with a right in, right out or something on there. I think we need to wait till that happens. Other than maybe doing striping. I don't want to see us go out there and remove or move the concrete curbing or anything and then have to turn around a year or 2 later and tear it all back out.
Well, yeah, I think we just ripped out the bricks and may have to do up on 31. And we'll have to see what we come up with for because there'll have to be an overall plan that will be let for the early 2027 letting, and it'll have to be incorporated into that, but we'll definitely keep that in mind.
And as part of the phase 1, we'll come up with the corridor improvement that will get approved by IDOT as part of the federal process. We can implement projects like that in stages. If there was something that we thought that gets excluded for that reason, we can certainly evaluate that later on.
Jim, you want to go ahead? I'm sorry, I didn't see you had your hand up because we have such a big screen here without your picture there. Are you there, Jim? Oh.
I am here. You know what? I realized the time over there. Just to keep it going, I'll just table my question to later.
I'll just make a very brief comment. I also agree with Kevin on his suggestion that Houston is likely to be a major crossing area. Other intersections, sorry. But just to reiterate, I wouldn't mind seeing some options there if we can, if any are available. Also, will you be sending us these initial drafts or for our review? Because there is a lot to take in.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
I'll echo that, what you two guys said. I work there on that corner, so I've seen it, and it has actually, the pedestrian and bike traffic has gone up since the road diet was in there. So I've noticed that.
We did propose or consider a crossing there in IDOT didn't love the idea of crossing there. We're concerned about it because the bike route is on McKee, and so then you're providing multiple crossings in short periods of time. And so the idea is to try and at least provide one safe route for people to navigate from Houston to McKee.
Could we move the proposed route down to Houston instead of McKee?
And you certainly could, and it would be the natural connection. The challenge is the queuing of traffic at that location is going to back up to Houston a lot of times too, and then all of a sudden you have another barrier that you have to navigate at certain times of the day. So certainly the safer crossing in the long term with the right crossing equipment at that location is McKee, but because it has less conflicts and ultimately with an overhead RFB installation, I think it improves the visibility, which is one of the current concerns. I was just driving down here as I was coming to the meeting today. There are, power poles through there and other things that impact your sight lines. So having that overhead RFB in the middle of the road is going to be a game changer to help people understand that there is someone there that's looking to cross the roadway.
I'm surprised that they okayed, or they said they were fine with that pedestrian path across the two driveways in and out of a gas station and a drive-through for Dunkin' Donuts. So I mean, that's a lot of traffic movements to have to deal with as a pedestrian.
I just had a couple of clarifying questions. As Dustin said, a lot of information, so I try to take notes as you're talking, but can you clarify the three intersections where the rapid flashing beacon will be?
Sure. So we're proposing one at Millview. And then there's already one at Morton, which we talked about potentially evaluating that as an overhead installation as well. There's one at Union, which we would install the overhead that we're recommending. And then also we were recommending a new one at McKee. That'd be the 4 total locations. And then obviously there's signalized controlled locations at both Main Street and Wilson Street under the traffic signal. And so city staff has all the documents that we presented tonight, and I'm sure they can share those with you. And then we're certainly willing to come back and talk and answer any questions if there's any follow-up that's necessary. Cool.
No's, or I think that's good. I'd like to see this keep going. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for all the feedback. Appreciate it.
Yep. Right, then we will move on to 7.3, which is Resolution 2026-19R, authorizing execution of a redevelopment agreement with Manhattan Real Estate Ventures, LLC, for 190 South Water Street. You can start that.
I sure will. I am very excited to present the opportunity for this project to all of you. It's something that we have been waiting for a very long time and could have a tremendous impact on our downtown. QT9 is a software company which is global, and their U.S. headquarters is currently located in Aurora, Illinois, but they are growing and expanding. And when they first started, they were located in downtown Aurora, and they came to us because they preferred as their next site for their headquarters a more urbanized environment for their employees to work in. And our downtown offers them that opportunity. The building that they're looking at is 190 South Water Street. It's the former location of Pamarco. In fact, Pamarco was located there for over 100 years. And at that time, they decided that they wanted to move into a new facility. They are still located in Batavia. The current state of the building, it looks like a 100-year-old metal manufacturing building. It's a pretty rough shape. And so the developer is proposing to make $12 million in improvements to that building. Max is going to put up the elevations to show the Plan Commission has already reviewed the design as well as the Historic Preservation Commission, and both were very much favorable toward the design of the building. Right now it is metal corrugated siding on the outside of this building. And as you can see, the renderings show brick and glass. There's also the courtyard that is depicted in that picture right there, place for employees to gather outside. You can see the gathering space, the covered gathering space that's located there. Both the developer and the owner of the business are here tonight. I'm sure we'd love to hear from them as well. But let me go through the terms of the deal that we're talking about. The project is currently located in TIF District number 3, which is set to expire in 2039. As we heard earlier in the consent agenda, we are in the process of looking at standing up a new TIF district that would incorporate this project. It would be hoped that this would be the very first project that we would have in that new TIF number 7. The incentive would be $1,867,500. The TIF assistance has been reviewed by our financial consultant, and it was determined that without this level of assistance, there is not a market rate of return on this kind of project. So, but for the city providing this incentive, it would be unlikely that there would be the investment to do so. Ordinarily, we have projects that we are contributing to that are merely improving a building and generating the additional tax increment from that for the city. But this project has a number of additional upside potential to it by bringing, in the start, 65 to 70 employees to our downtown. It's something that we have really been sorely lacking, and our small businesses, whether they're retail or they're restaurants, they really struggle during the weekday daytimes. And having a large employer like this could really be a game changer for downtown activity. Let's see, what else did I want to point out? The structure of the incentive would be an upfront reimbursement of TIF eligible costs. However, the reimbursement would not be made until once the software company occupies that building. So it will have been built and occupied, and then the developer will prove up those expenses. And once those expenses are proved up, then the city would provide the incentive as a reimbursement of those costs. Also included in the redevelopment agreement would be a clawback provision that if QT9 ceases operations at the site within 6 years after occupancy, then the agreement would allow us to claw back a pro rata portion of the incentive. Many upsides. I mentioned the daytime foot traffic, but as you can see from the design of the building, there's a lot of synergy with the adjacent buildings, not only the older limestone buildings that exist, but we are also anticipating that the block right to the east is where we contemplate a large-scale mixed-use development that would include apartments and the public parking structure and commercial. But what better place to have multifamily housing? Could be contemplated that many of the employees who are working for this employer would also be residents of that adjacent development. We love to see adaptive reuse of the buildings in our downtown, and it will definitely be a catalyst project for future development. It's consistent with the downtown plan that the city recently adopted. And the project is expected over the lifetime of the TIF to generate over $5 million in incremental tax revenue. So that benefits the city, but also benefits all of the other taxing bodies as well. And it also, I think, it would be something that would make the city of Batavia very proud in being able to attract a global software company and these type of high-tech positions to our downtown, enhancing our reputation and also our economic resilience. So staff is recommending that City Council approve the incentive amount of $1,867,500. And would the developer like to come up and say a few words?
Good evening. My name's Austin Dempsey. I'm here on behalf of Manhattan Real Estate Ventures, LLC. I'm joined here today with Ed Stetter from BEI Commercial Real Estate, our managing director, and Brant Engelhardt, a partner in Manhattan Ventures Real Estate, plus the owner of QT9 Software. I think Laura did a great job teeing up the potential of bringing the largest private employer in downtown Batavia to downtown Batavia. We're excited the 60 to 70 jobs that are going to come down, day one upon occupancy will most likely bloom into over 100 jobs. There'll be a lot of job opportunities created here in Batavia through QT9 plus the 25 to plus construction jobs along the way. So we're here to answer any questions. The renderings are on screen, Max. Thanks for putting those up. And so does anyone have any questions? Mr. Mayor.
I had one from some folks in town. What impact will this have on the, I'll call it the art studio that we have there and the Warehouse 55 antique store? Are they coming out then when this comes in, or will they be a partner to it?
My guess is the impact will be 100 and plus more visitors on a regular basis. Yeah, neither of those businesses are impacted at all, except for a lot more customers in the door.
I mean, will those two uses be able to stay there, or will they?
Yes, we are currently proposing the 42,000 square foot renovation of the historic structure being the metal component of the structure. It is not part of the Water Street Studios, Kiss the Sky, or Warehouse 55. All of that will remain intact as it is today, just with more customers.
That's the only question I've gotten about this, and I think that's very positive. And this summer, we've already had some conversations about having the city council come down a couple nights and do some walks. One night we'll do the west side, and one night we'll go over and do the east side. And one of the things we would probably want to do is maybe not go in these buildings, but wander through and point to them and maybe have you open the door for a second so everybody could see what is now. Maybe the place would be down by the time we get ready to do this. But there's a lot of interest on the parts of those sitting here about trying to do downtown Batavia over or increase it. I just want to say that based on that, I've been working with Kate Garrett over at the Depot Museum, and we're trying to put together a little booklet. I guess I'll call it Batavia Then and Downtown Batavia Then and Now. And there's been a lot of dramatic things. I mean, the whole Batavia Body Company left. Things in this area, all kinds of stuff happened. I mean, if you look at what we've done out here with the Peg Bond Center and everything else, I've had other cities, other mayors now call and say they want to come into Batavia and look at what we've done here, because we've apparently are one of the top in the region as far as kind of redoing our downtown. And I think this one is just going to flow right together with it and really continue to show what you go out and make the investments that we've already done, that this one will show that we're coming together with some really neat stuff and using some of the old stuff for new stuff as this building here, I think clearly illustrates that we've done some stuff that really does create history in the making and history renewed. So
I couldn't agree more. I would just add on to that, I take great pride in the fact that I'm a preservationist of historic buildings. And as we know, sometimes the eraser has to come out and a building has to come down. You guys know that as much as I do, and have had to make some hard decisions. But Mr. Mayor, to your point, a global headquarters for a software company in a historic renovated building right here in the heart of our town, I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to come and see this. Yes, sir.
I think Lance had his hand up first.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank you to all those involved. I mean, obviously, Laura mentions one of the but-fors in this, but I think there's a couple other intangible but-fors as well, and that, lies with you, Austin, and you, Brant. So I want to thank you guys for working through this. I know, taking a 150-year-old building and doing this with it is no simple task. The numbers reflect that. I think there's a lot of passion here and a lot of, like I said, the intangibles that make this town great. And, I know both of you guys are residents, and so I just can't thank you enough. I mean, we've talked about this on council and previous councils till we're blue in the face that we need a project like this desperately to get some foot traffic downtown, and we need that catalyst site. So overly excited, and want to say thanks and continue to please come to the city with how we can reasonably help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Alderman Lancey says there. Thank you for putting this together. I actually think this is a really appropriate use of TIF funds. It seems like exactly the right sort of project for us to get involved in, sort of take an underutilized space, redevelop it, get somebody in there. Currently, it's sort of the corrugated steel, but on the outside of the corrugated steel, we have a lot of art on there. We have talked about, but we haven't made any decisions on having sort of public art wrapped into new developments downtown. I would just sort of strongly like to suggest that we revisit the conversation we tabled at the retreat about requiring public art to be part of developments. It's something that I don't think we revisited. We tabled it at the retreat and never came back to it. So I want to remind folks of that. And then also put that towards you that I at least would be looking at, first off, great project, love it, go for it. But the more we can incorporate public art, especially when you're literally connected to an art studio, seems like a good use of space there, especially since we'll be taking art off the building. We'll be losing art as we redevelop it. Of course, it's worth it sometimes, but it'd be nice if we can reincorporate that some way.
I appreciate your comments, and I agree. As a very staunch and strong advocate for art in this community, I'd love to work with wearing some of my other hats in this town, work with this group in our city to find anywhere and everywhere that we can get public art up to really enhance the aesthetics of our community. I would agree.
I think you would be hard pressed to find a Batavia family who has given more to the arts community than the Dempsey family.
Art and Water Street Studio named after your family. So.
Mm-hmm. The main gallery.
I just wanted to note that there has been some hope by members of Fermilab, a few of them, to see Batavia develop more as a tech hub in the area, given the potential that Fermilab has provided of having a lot of very highly, educated professionals in the science space already here, that there is a lot of potential for that. So I think this lines in exactly with that and helping to cultivate more of that local sort of, technical capability. So I think it's a good fit for us.
And they're actually joining another tech firm that is located in our downtown, who you heard from last week when we were talking about the South River Street corridor, CAE. Do you remember that gentleman came up and spoke about his business? They actually are located downtown at the corner of Wilson and Island as well, on the second story above Limestone.
Yeah, I have three things. So no offense, but I have to put this out here. You talk about the clawback and the time period of 6 years, but I didn't see what that rate for every, not saying that this is going to have to happen, but I just wanted it out there for everybody. What is that percentage? Because I know that we've had that with other developments where we know exactly what that amount is, or.
It would be reduced by the amount of tax increment that has been earned by the project. So that's how we would look at the reduction each year, so that there's a direct number that we can point to.
Okay. Point number 2, and this is more geared towards the business owner. I know that you've talked about having many amenities in there. Is having a kitchen or food service part of that, or is it going to be the employees are going to have the will of being able to? I know sometimes to enhance employees to stay in the building, people will have cafeterias for their. So I just curious about that.
Yeah, we never closed during COVID, so we didn't have a problem going back to the office, but we do have a lot of amenities inside the building. We don't have a cafeteria. Our goal is to get all of our employees out on the street in Batavia. I love Batavia. I live here. I love Everdeens. I love the Goats. I love Riverside. So we go to all of them now, and even though it's a little bit of a drive. But my employees are fired up about going out there. We do cater food in, and we try to want to basically use Batavia places to cater food in. So we do right now, actually. We use a lot of the stuff that's right around our building right now, but that's because we're in Aurora and it's convenient. When we're in Batavia, our goal is to get Batavia businesses to all the food. It's going to come from there. I can't tell you how much Riverside pizza I eat right now. So, but yeah, we don't have a cafeteria or anything like that. We have like more of it's a bar. We have a huge bar in there. So a lot of room for food and drinks, but the goal is to get out. We love the fact that this is right by Sturdy Shelter. It's right by Riverside. It's right by Overflow. Mentioned apartments in the future. I've had several employees come to me and ask about it. They're all looking at homes in the downtown area right now. So, and keep in mind, 65 to 70% of my employees are from Batavia. My internship program is 90% Batavia kids. And I coached every single thing for both of my kids for 12, 13 years here. So I have a lot of connections with a lot of the college kids right now and some of the high school kids. So do a lot with Batavia United Way. So my goal is to keep everything Batavia. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to get this to work.
So my point number 3, since you're up there, tell us a little bit about what your company does and the technology that you have.
Sure. So we are a commercial software company. We develop our own software, sell it globally. We have an ERP solution, which essentially is a software platform that runs a manufacturer from start to finish. So accounting, inventory, purchasing, sales, the whole kit and caboodle. We also have a quality management software that is, it runs all your quality requirements, like for the FDA, for ISO 9001, or anything along those lines, if you're familiar with those. So from perspective, if you made a medical device, you can't sell it unless you have a full-fledged quality system. My software makes that paperless. So that's really, and we have a bunch of other little things, but those are 2 big ones. We have an office in Ireland. We have this office here. We'll be opening an office in Texas to go after Latin America. So it's really, we sell business to business. We don't really sell to consumers or anything along those lines, but I started here in Aurora, down the street out of my house, and built it into what it is now. We've been in business for, it'll be 21 years in June.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Jim has his hand up.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? As the only member of City Council who is a director for a major software company, thank you for coming. Thank you for opening an office here. You're going to laugh. The reason why I can't be there because I'm in Atlanta talking to 60 clients about AI on our platforms. So glad you're here. It goes without saying. I mean, I just want to kind of point out, number one, it takes a lot to say you're going to relocate your business to a new community, right? Because the fact is they were successful in Aurora, and they are taking a risk to do this. So I hope you all acknowledge that. And part of what mitigates that risk is all the momentum we've created by being okay with change. I mean the investments that we've been making over the past year. Things like the data center, things like having the courage to renew older properties, things like having the courage to quite frankly tear down properties that that are long past their prime. I mean, all these things do add up to momentum, and then you get the network effects, right? We have a lot, I'm thinking of Campana in 10 years, right? I mean, we have a lot of older historical properties where if we have this tried and true proven work of historical property renewal, I mean, this will become more a regular thing. So thanks for doing it. I'm super excited and looking forward to touring the facility once it's there.
I like the fact you have a diversity of the technology that you deal with. So it's not like, if something slips on one type of industry that you're going to go away. From what you've mentioned, you have a very diverse from manufacturing to healthcare, and that is something that will help you stay sustainable and keep you all here in our community.
It was a learned lesson from 2008, 2009. So yes, very diverse in customers.
Great. Thank you. I have one more question for Austin while he's here.
Sure.
The art that's coming off the west side of the building now on the Pomarco side of it, you have a nice limestone building a block south of that. If it's a big blank canvas, just off the top of my head, that would be one place where, even temporary, you could keep that public.
Yeah, Laura and I have had a brief conversation about those murals. Those were a project we put in place a long time ago, shortly after we opened Water Street Studios, to try to create more of an art center in our community. I'm not sure everybody realizes how large they are because they are up on the but they are 4 by 12 panels, and there's multitude of them. I mean, they're like billboard size. The other thing is, anytime you have art, especially some of the 3D art, next time you're over there, if you get a chance to take a harder look at it, it's aged a little bit. We may not be able to save all of them when we bring them down, but we will put the panels in storage and see if there's an opportunity in the future to reuse pieces, parts, or all of them.
Just a thought I have, because I think they really do lend to that in that area. So excited about it. I think it's going to be a great project. Something that we need. Exciting.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what a perfect storm this is, and that, we need to take full advantage, and whatever that means in the future or whatever. I just think, without the residents that we have, basically, that wear other hats, this might not be happening. So we just got to remember that. And once again, thank you guys.
Okay. No, I'll make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 2026-019R, authorizing execution of a redevelopment agreement with Manhattan Real Estate Ventures, LLC, for 190 South Water Street.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Malay. Roll call, please.
Raza?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Beck?
Aye.
Malay?
Aye.
Malone?
Aye.
Silva?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Barron?
Aye.
Lehman?
Aye.
Lohman?
Aye.
Pieper?
Aye.
Fehrenbach?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
White? That's 13.
Okay. I'll go to council next week, and if you want to show up and talk about it on TV again, be happy to hear it again. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we will move on to item 7.5, continue discussion on implementing contracts or registrations.
Is this something where maybe we can put off?
7.4.
Yeah, 7-1.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. 7.1, which is now 7.4. Resolution 2026-16R, authorizing execution of the preliminary engineering Phase 1 services agreement with GFT Trans Systems for reconstruction of Hubbard Avenue.
Thank you. I just was going to go through a quick summary of the memo. Hopefully very quickly, because it's way past my bedtime right now. So let's see, Hubbard Avenue. Most people aren't familiar with it. You don't get over that way that often. It's in the industrial park. It doesn't get probably the attention that hopefully it should. It's one of the lowest rated roadways in the city, despite having some of the biggest employers that we have in the city, including Aldi, Waste Management, Fee Soil, and DS Containers, among others. The corridor has drainage issues. If you drive it, there's inconsistent, not only right-of-way, but pavement widths. There's very limited pedestrian access. There's little spot segments of sidewalk, but really nothing that's continuous. And if you look like bigger picture, if you've seen the extension of Couts Road, that extension is supposed to have a bike path with it. So having this corridor extending a pedestrian and a bikeway through the corridor would be very nice to connect fully up to Fabian. We received STPL grant funding in 2024. That's the federal grant that we've used in the past. We're targeting construction in 2029. This phase of the engineering would include evaluating the roadway and intersection alternatives, improving the drainage, again, the bike and pedestrian connectivity in accordance with our complete streets policy. Real quick, we had 11 firms that submitted on this. GFT was scored very highly. We've worked with them quite a bit, obviously. They did the design for our Prairie and Wilson Street intersection, which won the APWA Chicago Metro Project of the Year. Real quick, we've negotiated a price with them of approximately $379,000, which is within our budget. And our request is that we authorize phase one engineering with GFT.
No, but I would just comment that that's needed there. If you haven't been over there, badly needed, and it is a very important roadway that improving needs to be. And this is a long time. The STP grant. What does that stand for? STP.
Surface Transportation Program.
Transportation Program.
Okay. That it was from the 2023 call. It says, and it's to be construction in 2029. So we're in the middle of that. So keeping this project going, I think is vital.
Yes, and it's a long process. So, and even with that, it seems like it's a long time, but all of the steps that you have to go through with IDOT, it's not a lot of time in terms of that. All of the PDR, the phase two, and then finally going into construction. It takes forever. It seems like it takes forever.
There's a lot of traffic on there, a lot of important traffic.
Of industry.
I've had the opportunity, I serve as chairman of the Chicago Transportation Policy Committee in the city, and I've had the opportunity kind of making reference to what has just been mentioned by Alderman Lay. It's been talked about in there a couple of times about, Jeff, are you guys really going to do this? And I said, yes, we are. There's some issues with it. So I'm sure we've kept it alive on the table, and I would really like to get it done here as soon as possible, because it's almost becoming a joke with me in there that it's something that I got that somebody doesn't want to do or something. I don't know. So we need to get this taken care of.
We have a good team with GFT working on it. It's not going to be an easy project. There's a lot of challenges, right-of-way challenges and things like that, but I think we have a good team.
I move we approve Resolution 2026-016R, authorizing the execution of the preliminary engineering services agreement with GFT, Inc., of Geneva, Illinois, for the reconstruction of Hubbard Avenue in the amount of $379,955.
Second. By Malay, second by Salfa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. That one on consent agenda? Good with that? Okay.
Are we doing 7.5?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you said we were done.
We're going to go there next.
Okay.
I continue discussion on implementing contractor registration.
Thank you. We had originally talked about this in 2016, and at the time, the council was not interested in implementing contractor registration. Since that time, we've had some various complaints from homeowners about issues with contractors and getting things done and so on and so forth. So we brought it back, and we had some initial discussion about it back in August of 25. And there was some additional discussion, and there was a direction to, provide some additional information and framework for this if we were going to implement it. So I did provide that in the memo as part of the information, where I have about, I think, 12 points of what we would be looking to do. I can go over those if you want. If not, we can certainly talk about it individually if that's something that you would like to do. This is something that we've talked about. We think it would be useful and helpful for residents in particular, because we have had issues with some contractors and getting things done in a proper manner. So this would be the proposal, and this is the framework we would have. If there is direction to proceed, then we would come back with an ordinance to actually implement it. We're looking at this point in my memo of a June 1st implementation, but depending on how long it takes us to get everything put together, we may recommend pushing that off again, just to make sure that we give enough time for notice to people that we're going to be doing this, and to follow up with individual contractors regarding the new process that we'd have. So.
I think that this deserves a lengthy discussion and more time than maybe we're ready to commit to tonight. But I think there might be one or two people in the audience who've been waiting to maybe speak on this. So might I suggest that we have public comment and then maybe come back and have a further discussion at a later meeting?
Okay. We have members of the public. All we need is your name.
My name is John Cara Theodore. I'm a homeowner here in Batavia for the past 5 years. I was very happy to hear that this was finally being addressed and brought up. Over the past 5 years, I've been under construction at my home. Had to hire several contractors over the years. Some of my concerns that were raised were contractor accountability. Just the way the process is set up right now, I don't feel that there's enough protection for the homeowners when it comes to contractors that we're hiring. Our contractors are coming in, filling out permits, and have a requirement to complete the job and finalize the job. I've had several permits that have been in a hold status, and some that have failed and have been pending for over 3 years. I am forced to address them myself due to the fact that the contractors that were hired and that paid for the permits, they're not currently required to do anything. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of where the process leads, but the contractor comes in, fills out the permit, comes down and does the work. If the work's not satisfactory with the homeowner, there's not a lot of follow-up. They can leave permits open. They can have a failed permit, and they're not required to close it currently. I'm currently trying to sell my home. I have one contractor in particular. He's had a failed failed permit for 4 years. I came down, I followed up, and there's no follow-up. We don't get involved in that. It could become a matter of the court. And I'm saying, do I file a complaint with the state? Is Batavia filing a complaint with the state? Where's the protection? The city is our last line of defense for homeowners against contractors that come in and do the wrong thing, or don't complete the work, or do bad work. But when we go to the city, if you're taking money for a permit and they're required to come in and finish the job, we have to have the follow-up in the city and that stamp of approval saying the job is complete, the job is correct, you're protected. Otherwise, why are we requiring permits if the contractor themselves doesn't have to close them? it falls upon the homeowner to now follow up at the end when they need it most. And it's the only thing that's going to get them to be able to sell their house is to come down and say, how do I close this permit? Why a permit's 3-4 years old? How does that happen? I'm stunned. I've remodeled several homes in several different states. I like Batavia a lot. I enjoy living here. My son lives here. He's been sitting with me for the last 2 hours. He's been awesome. He gets a big present for this one tonight. But as you know, as I bought a fixer-upper that needed a lot of work. And, you know, and I hire my contractors, you think that the job's going to get done and it's going to get done appropriately. And then all of a sudden when it doesn't, the only thing you can do is come down to the city and say, what's the status with that? What do I do? And nobody really had any answers for me on what to do. I was in a bad position and currently still am, where it's, how are they getting new permits if they still have mine that's in failed status? I see their signs all over Batavia. They're coming down here week after week, applying and getting permits. And I'm like waving, going like, what? Why can they do that without having any kind of accountability to finishing the job and completing the work? And if it found out that a permit's invalid because they falsified the information and somebody else did the work for them, shouldn't stricter things happen to them at that point for a contractor coming in? If they didn't even do the work, but they tell the city of Batavia that they're going to do the work and they end up not, you know, they come after me for the remainder of the money. I said, well, finish the job, have them sign off on the permit, and I'll pay you the money. How can a company say, well, we're not going to warranty our work unless you pay in full? But why would I ever pay in full if the city hasn't passed the inspection on the job? The system's not set up to protect the homeowner. The system's set up where when I come in and I say, well, we don't do that. We don't handle that. You can file with the state. But why file with the state? I live here. I got my permit here. I live here. I pay my taxes here. Why do I get the state involved and Better Business Bureau and file all these different things? You know, in my opinion, a contractor comes in, fills out a permit. He's signing a contract with the city of Batavia saying, I'm going to do that work and I'm going to complete the work the best of my abilities, and I'm going to close that contract. That's not currently happening right now. Even with failed permits, they were continued to get additionally new permits without any accountability to close the other ones first. Or maybe it goes to a heightened level saying, well, you haven't cleared this permit and this permit still failed. Before we give you these new permits, these need to be cleared up, and we have somebody that's actually following up on that. I don't know, you know, where to get the additional help from. I'm assuming that being a permitted requirement, that unless things change, why are we applying for permits? Why do we have permits for home renovations if those permits are not going to be bound to some kind of responsibility and bound to some kind of registration or accountability from each of these contractors? It's thousands and thousands of dollars that they're getting. How do they not finish a permit and be required to do so? And if you break the permit and you falsify a permit, there needs to be some kind of a reaction to that. There needs to be a penalty by the city that's going to give that, other than telling the homeowners, well, it's not something we get involved in. I'll have to talk to legal. I heard that several times. Well, legal never called me. You know what I mean? Legal never called me up and said, hey, we're gonna file this with the state and go after them. I'm still dropping my son off at school and seeing their signs on all people's lawns for work that's coming up for them. I said, but what about me? What about my 4-year-old job that never got completed? So I was happy to hear. I had several people that work for the city said, you know, you should attend this. You should definitely be there for that. Give them your input and get the word out there that these kind of registrations and stuff are so important to protect the people that spend a lot of money to get their home fixed and to get this to have a change, actually, and that we're finally protected in our investment to fix our homes. Without it, we don't know where to turn. I certainly don't, because I hit a wall trying to get these resolved, and I'm still dealing with it today. I lost a buyer a couple months ago. The first thing the buyer's real estate agent said to me, he said, we looked it up. There's a lot of open permits there. And they said, it's so long ago. I said, I know. I said, the contractors all applied for the permits and they never finished them. So now I gotta get involved and figure out how I do that. So hopefully this becomes a topic and something that continues on and gets resolved, because from the word I'm hearing is things need to change, and if it changes, there'll be protection for the homeowners. Without it, here we are a couple of years later trying to get these resolved and losing the sale of our home due to technicalities and specific little details that were overlooked at the beginning, But I appreciate your time, and I know it's getting late. Thank you. I hope to talk more about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Tim?
Yeah, I would just say thank you very much for coming in and waiting through what you waited through to get to that piece. But you're not the only one we've heard these kind of things from. And so really, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's news to me that we don't have to close out our permits, which makes me think, why do we have permits in the first place as well? So I would love to hear from staff on just kind of what's the reality to that situation, and we're supposed to close them out, they never come back to close them out. How does that work out?
Do we want to talk about this now, Tim?
Yeah, I can't get into specifics about I don't know his particular situation.
Not his,
so we'd have
anyone.
to, no, right. We do close permits and we do follow up on them, but it's, they're open permits, and then we make sure that the things are done. And if they're not, we do follow up on them. So, I can't say the specifics about his case, but, we do.
Scott, I think we don't have legal recourse against someone to force them to finish the work that they got a permit for. It's like, you got a permit for a deck, I need to see a deck. If they never build the deck, they never build the deck.
So as an attorney, I'm going to tell you that I feel very bad for your situation. I'm sure it's completely frustrating, but the city is not the lawyer for the public. It's not the way it works. So we can't force a contractor to do anything. That's why you have legal recourse. You said you hit a dead end. The way you go is, and I've had friends who've had to do this, you have to go hire an attorney. And then you got to sue the contractor for breach of contract. In terms of the registration points that we're talking about here, in terms of contractor registration, the goal with this particular process, which we can discuss further, would be to make sure that we have contractors that are legitimate, that don't do the types of things that you are unfortunately experiencing. But our ability to do certain things would be to have registration, but then you can, for instance, revoke the registration and prohibit work within the city if they violate local or state laws or violate building codes. But in terms of just individual it's a contract. Individual contractual disputes, the city doesn't get involved in. That's the situation. It's not our job as the city to force a contractor to do something. We can't force them to do anything.
If not forcing them, you're having them apply for a permit. So what are you requiring from them when they apply for a permit? Because if I apply for a permit in a city and I don't end up doing the work, I have somebody else doing it, the permit becomes invalid. Now at that point, it's a city issue because you took the application, you took the money, they filed for it, they never did the work, they had somebody else do the work, and they never completed the work. The legal end of it is, I understand it. I can sue till the day's done. I don't want to do that. I'm relying upon the city that where they file for the permit is the follow through. It's just who did the work? Did you finish it and complete it? Because I'm not going to give you another permit unless you close out this permit and finish these permits. Why are we doing the whole permit process if there's no true inspection? That's my question as a homeowner. I have a roof that got done, right? I was told by the city, we don't inspect the roof. We only inspect one part of the roof. We inspect the chimney. That's it. The rest of the roof, that's not on us. Because of the insurance to go up there and apply and get on the roof. I understand that.
That's not correct either.
Well, that's all.
Sir, I understand your frustrations totally, but what we're talking about here is trying to get good contractors into the city to have to register. They have certain things they have to do in terms of insurance, in terms of other things to show that they have like workers' comp and general liability insurance, surety bonds. When we issue a permit, if they come in with the proper materials to get a permit and we issue the permit, we can't force them to do anything. I mean, I'll ask you, are you expecting the city then to take legal action to force a contractor to do something on your behalf?
If they don't follow through with it, do you guys file a complaint against that contractor with the state? If they're working in your city, you're giving them the permit. They can't do the job unless they come in and get a permit. So you're actually stopping them from doing future work and damage to other homeowners by refraining to give them further permits. Yes, is it legal to get involved? I guess it can. If the city goes to the legal and says, we're going to file a complaint with the state against this contractor. I know we don't want to get involved in a lot of that, but at some point, there is no protection for, if I, to get the roof on, if it has to come through the city and fill out a permit, where does the city take over from that point? If that's the requirement, is to come down and.
I'd like staff to answer that because they do this every day with providing permits, inspecting the work, and then providing either a pass or fail on that. And I don't know if registration solves that side of it. So I don't know if Scott or Jeff wants to answer this.
Yeah, I mean, we would not normally file a lawsuit against a contractor because that's not something that is our realm. You know, unless we had contractor registration where we have the ability to revoke a contractor's registration or draw on their bond or surety or whatever it is, that would be our remedy to do that. In some cases, you can use that to pay for some of the damages that happen to individual homeowners or whoever, you know, were injured by that contractor not doing that work. When a contractor, you know, applies for a permit, you know, we do the normal things. We would review it, we issue the permit, we start doing inspections. If the contractor walks away, then we have an open permit that, you know, we would say, look, you know, this needs to get done. And honestly, the responsibility then falls on the homeowner. It's their property. It's really their permit. So that, you know, we're trying not to be harmful to them, knowing especially if there are some that have been open for a while, we're trying not to be harmful to that homeowner because, you know, they now have to do that work. But if we have contractor registration, that gives us some remedies to try and address some of that.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, so 2 points I want to make. First off, I think we're kind of getting bogged down in some of the details of what can and can't happen now, whereas the real question is what role do we want the city to take on, and is it an appropriate role for government to take? We have levers, we have tools with which we can hold contractors accountable. That's not necessarily suing them. We're not just talking about suing them. We're talking about can we control in the ways that government can control which contractors can and can't come into the city, sort of a in-depth, hard conversation. I do think we have a governmental interest in that. If folks are beginning projects, abandoning the projects, whether it's the homeowner or a contractor, we don't want half-finished decks, right? We don't want decks that aren't up to code. If they come in, they fail the code inspection, well, there should be some expectation then that you don't get to take a second deck permit out if you never passed the first one. Right now, that's not the case. Right now, you can half build 75 decks and then disappear, okay? But so that's the conversation I think we should have rather than will we sue on behalf of homeowners. That isn't kind of how it works or really what we're talking about. The second point I want to make here, just to wrap that one up, it's contractor accountability. The questions we should be asking ourselves is what role do we play in contractor accountability? Second point I want to make, this is a really in-depth conversation. I really feel like we can spend a lot of time talking about that. I think there's some really important nuances that we need to dive into, role of government, role of contractors, and all of this. I worry that it being 5 minutes to 10, that we can't really have this conversation in the robust, meaningful way that John deserves, that our constituents deserve. I really do propose that we kick this out just because it really is. I think it's a really important topic, and I think we need to spend a lot of time on it. So I would propose that we move this to maybe the next COW meeting.
Yeah, we wanted to just get it on an agenda because, we
understood.
We wanted to at least not let it languish and bring it forward again. So, I mean, that was the point.
What we're talking about is contractor registration. That's what we're talking about, correct? Okay, because I'd like to keep the topic limited to what we're supposed to be talking about.
Well, contractor registration would be what happens if you don't get registered or you lose registration. So there does need to be enforcement mechanisms and consequences if we're talking about that. So I would say that fits within the scope, just to be clear.
Matt or Robin, did either one want to kick it? Yeah.
I'm going to hold it till next time.
Well, yeah, and I think we need to say that when we're going to have this conversation, we're going to dedicate an hour or two to it so we can really have the conversation and everybody can say what they need to say.
Since we are putting it off, could I make one request that we could get a example of another city that's done this, maybe a more in-depth example of how they've implemented it, so that can inform our discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I did provide, the list of some of the other communities that have had or do contractor registration. So, I mean, we can see about providing you some additional information on that too. So, yeah.
I think it would help.
I read it.
I read it too. I knew there were cities in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Next meeting, we'll end that here tonight, and
thank you.
We'll get that on the next COW. Okay. Move on to council updates, project status.
Yes. One of the things I wanted to encourage everyone to respond to Lori Botterman's email. She had sent a request to see for you to respond to the poll about when you might be available for farmers market events this summer so that we can get those on your calendar. That was a really successful event last year. Lori has also put it out to all of the city departments are each going to take a weekend at the farmers market and highlight some of the projects that are going on in their department. Those were very successful as well. We had the South River Corridor project that was out there one week and some others. And it was we had a lot of great community engagement, and that is one of the objectives in our current strategic plan. Let's see. Human Resources posted several positions, the Community Engagement Intern, Public Safety Management Analyst, the Civil Engineer or Engineering Assistant, and then we have an internal posting for Manager of Electric Operations. We would like to have that position filled before the current person who is in that role. We anticipate retirement within the next couple of years, and we need his support over more on the engineering side, with Steve Allen moving to the Assistant Director of Public Works, and so offers us the opportunity to get somebody trained up and also offer the additional electric engineering support that we really need at this time. And then I think that's about it, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions? Okay, then we'll move to other business. Does anybody else have any other business for this evening? Chris?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that over the weekend, there was quite a few issues with some water mains, especially in Ward 1, and the city employees were out there promptly in the freezing cold, fixing everything. And I wanted to extend my appreciation for that because it was darn cold out, and they got the job done. They dug it up even though it was frozen and fixed everything along Ward 1. I don't know if there was other issues in other wards, but right across from the fire station and along Woodland Hills and a couple other places, it was real bad.
I did see some of the disastrous water sprays and everything out there that didn't look like fun.
Yeah, if you can imagine, how cold it is that we're complaining about. anyway, but to add water on top of
Put
that.
water on top of it and be out there for hours fixing that stuff.
Exactly.
Nothing else, then we need to go into executive session for purchase and sale of real estate. We Need a motion?
Move it second. Second.
I moved it, yeah.
Roll call.
Raza. Lancey.
Aye.
Beck. Malay. Malone.
Aye.
Solfa. Wolf.
No.
Barron. Lehman. Lohman. Pieper. Fehrenbach.
No.
Anderson. White.
Yeah, exactly.
Tonight. Okay, we'll take a